1 2 check Chuffy 1 2. Hi, you're with Scott. I'm Ganjikidd. I'm Grave Kipper. It's midnight. It's always midnight. This is your right ear and your left ear. This is in mono. Today we're doing Madeleine McCann's parents' interviews and their body language. We're following on from our last episode on this, which was a few days ago now, on the revolving variety of content here. There it is. No, that's the new one, that's the current one. Whoops. There it is, 10 days ago. So we're following on from 10 days ago. So if you want to know what's going on with me, my credentials, what we're doing here today, the body language, all this, go and check out the one 10 days ago. If you haven't, there it is, 10 days ago. And playlists, we've got a Madeleine McCann playlist now. So if you go on the playlist, you'll see all the videos we've done about Madeleine McCann. Of course, there's loads of content, isn't there? But what we've done is to try and stick to the facts. So we've gone with the book they tried to ban recently, literally recently, in the European Court of Human Rights. The Madeleine McCann's parents tried to write off the lead detective of the investigation from Portugal and his book and say it was slander and libel. But the European Court of Human Rights upheld the defence of the Portuguese lead detective and said his book is not slander and is not libel. So he looked through his book, specifically at the parts where he talks about who he thinks did it, and the evidence that supports the idea that the McCanns were somehow involved in the covering up of the death of their daughter. So we've got 4 episodes where we read the book and talk about that, and that gets quite big around episode 3 and 4, where we really start to lay down the smack on why the lead detective thinks the parents are potentially suspects. Then we started looking at interviews and embedded confessions. A fellow called Richard D. Hall has done... Hello, MM. Good afternoon. A fellow called Rich D. Hall did some good videos on Madeleine McCann. So we condensed that down to 2 episodes, just looking at the interviews and embedded confessions. I'm not going to take us on wild goose chases around the houses on all different things. I'm going to stick really close to the guaranteed facts, the evidence. Then we started on McCann's on film, body language analysis. So that's what we're doing today. McCann's on film, body language analysis. We got halfway through this first interview. We're trying to look at the interviews that are as close to the disappearance of Madeleine as possible. The freshest, the rawest, the more close. As time went on, we know that they earned millions of pounds. They became millionaires. They took the money for themselves, appointed themselves board of directors, changed the reason for the fighting fund to include they could take the money, supplying themselves with to provide for their lifestyle, and they became millionaires. So as time went on, they might have changed a bit, the distance from the time, their lifestyle changed. But the earlier interviews I like to stick to as close as possible. So we've got this one, we're going to continue. There are loads of interviews, it goes on for years, doesn't it? So we will have lots and lots to cover. We're doing this intermittently as part of our revolving carousel of content. It's a variety show. So we do podcasts on criminology and psychology. Recently started that, called Thus. That's the recent episode, Thus. We're looking at a YouTuber on Thus. A bit of a chuffer. We're looking at him. Words on stream tomorrow, of course, for charity. And playing a few games. Stuff like that. So we've got the revolving content. We're back on it. Here we are. Here I am. And we know what we're doing. I've got the Streets of Whiterun playing in the background for quite relaxing music in the background. It seems okay. If there's a problem with it, tell me. I'll turn off the background music. And I'm just going to tweet that we're live on YouTube. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Informal Films. At Informal Films. Scott Ganjikidd there, at Informal Films. And I tweet stuff. Like I recently did a remix for DSP's Banana song there. So I tweet stuff. So you can find me on there. And I've tweeted it, so let's do it. Not much chuffing today. Under 5 minutes of chuffing on the interview. And we can get straight into it. This is where we left off, so let's just see what they're saying.
Family unit up until that night. And with the friends we were here, certainly for us, it was as good a holiday as we have had with the children up until that point.
You have to keep believing that Madeleine is still going to be found alive and well.
Absolutely.
Do you ever...
So we'll go from this question. You have to keep believing. In fact, I will turn off the background music sometimes while I'm listening to them, because I want to be able to pay full attention. And I will say, I'll blow it up a little bit. Let me just shift it around on the screen a little bit. it is poor quality, isn't it? You know, the interviews, it's strange to me. I'll say this, I said it before in all the other episodes, but it's strange to me that if you wanted to find your daughter so desperately that you would allow things like this to happen. Surely there should be a HD remaster of every interview. Surely there should be a collection of all the interviews. You'd want every piece of information you'd ever put out there to be collected and recorded, because it could help someone find her. So if I was looking for my daughter and I had £1 million and all that and a media team, I would spend time trying to make sure all of these interviews in the best possible quality were out there as part of a big collection available online. It seems to me the opposite has happened, that only bits and pieces are available in poor quality, as if someone's done a good job of trying to control what was available online in the media, as if someone's done that sort of copyright takedown job, you know? It feels really strange that there aren't so many interviews out there.
You have to keep believing that Madeleine is still going to be found alive and well.
Absolutely.
Do you ever...
So the guy hasn't finished talking. Jerry's in, so now I'm in. Okay, now I'm in. Actually, I do like the Streets of White in the background for this one. You tell me if you like the music or not. He's interrupting before he's finished the question. We do believe. He's angry.
You have to keep believing that Madeleine is still going to be found alive and well.
Absolutely.
And Kate's nodding. And he says, absolutely, we do believe.
Do you ever...
But then he's cut off by this. At this point, Jerry is starting to get antagonised as part of the interview. You know, he's starting to get a bit contentious and angry. Kate has been through the mill, we'll say that. You have to believe.
You have to keep believing that Madeleine is still going to be found.
You have to keep believing. It's an interesting question, because if you're presenting a fake facade, then you have to keep pretending that Madeleine will be found alive and well. So there's only one word difference there between believing and pretending, but it's a big word, isn't it? But it allows you to sort of switch that word in your mind and sort of nod along. Oh, I do have to keep believing that for these interviews, I have to keep believing that she's going to be alive and well, yeah. But I know really she's not. You know, it allows you to nod alongside.
Alive and well.
Absolutely.
Do you ever...
So there's a difference in the two of them, though. In that I'm going to turn off the music. Oh, sorry, I'm doing this to you up and down with the music, but it's a little bit too much for me now. I just want something really gently in the background that has the right atmosphere. I've gone for Streets of White Run today. It seems to have this build to it, which I don't really... Oh, anyway. Kate's very in agreement with that. She nods along, yeah, we do have to keep this up. Whereas Jerry's almost argumentative and contentious before the question is finished.
Though, allow yourself to drift towards negative thoughts?
Do you ever allow yourself to drift towards negative thoughts? I wonder what those negative thoughts could be. We're never going to find her again. If you were innocent, you'd be thinking the negatives are the worst possible things that could have happened. We're never going to find her again. If you're not innocent and something's gone on, you know, we need to look at this through both viewpoints. Then the worst thing that could happen is that you get caught, isn't it? You get in trouble.
Because it may be, as a family, holidays we
And is still going to be found alive and well.
Absolutely.
Do you ever, though, allow yourself to drift towards negative thoughts?
I think in the early days we did, and I think that...
Jerry's doing a lot of blinking. We talked about this in the last episode. It seems strange sometimes that you think, who's going to take on this question? It's almost like Jerry has now been told to shut up in some way through some cue, because he was contentiously interrupting just a minute ago, and now, when the question is finally asked, he just keeps his pursed lips tight and allows Kate to speak.
I think in the early days...
But he closes his eyes in a very long blink here, which is a sign of both stress and not wanting to be in the situation. It's like being able to take a mental break. You close your eyes for a minute, or it might be that he's remembering something, like he's thinking specifically about something in his memory, and it gives him a moment to think about it. I think it's more about mental stress and a break from the questioning.
I think in the early days we did, and I think that's inevitable. I think any parent who's been through this does that, certainly in the first few days. And
Kate actually cracks her first smile here, but it's a more manic sort of smile. It's a very staring, but there is a slight sort of smile here. It's a very strange expression. I don't see that expression on people very much. I see that as, you know, I think Kate's really extreme here. I think she's kind of close to the edge, is a way to explain that, I think.
And I think that's inevitable. I think any parent who's been through this does that, certainly in the first few days. We don't now. We're actually a lot stronger, a lot more hopeful now. And we have to be hopeful. It's what keeps us going and keeps us focused.
We don't now. So we're even not close enough to the very start of the crime, are we? It's a real shame that we don't get so many interviews at the very start of the situation. But
We did, and I think that's inevitable. I think any parent who's...
She's talking quite quickly as well, which might be a sign of nerves. Bear in mind, we're already halfway into the interview. She's had time to settle.
I think in the early days we did, and I think that's inevitable. I think any parent who's been through this does that, certainly in the first few days. We don't now. We're actually...
So when she was doing that smile and that funny expression, she was saying any parent who does this does so in the first few days, but we don't now. So it's something that's happened to them. Like, she's almost like looking back on the fact that they were so worried and now feeling some sort of relief, I believe. Of course, all of this body language analysis is my conjecture. I review it 2 or 3 times. I will give you 2 or 3 different answers. I'll see something different on the edit that I forgot to say, and I should have said that. When I make edits, and I've said this on the other episode, but if I did an edit, I would be able to look through it and cut out bits and add in bits on my second viewing. This is just raw live, so you get what you get, but these are some thoughts.
Inevitable. I think any parent who's been through this...
She gives a half shrug of the shoulder, which is a sort of bargaining.
And I think that's inevitable. I think any parent who's...
Any parent. So, and she closes her eyes again
been through this
with a bit of a long blink before this funny expression. It's weird because it's almost like relating it to other parents who have been through this. Any parent who's been through this would feel like this, I suppose, because I don't know, because not many parents have been through this, whatever this is.
We did, and I think that's inevitable. I think any parent who's been through this does that, certainly in the first few days.
And it's interesting that she's putting this strange expression when she's describing what other parents do in these situations. It's a very difficult expression to read. I would say that there's something in the idea that she's referring to other parents and what they would do in a situation like this, which might inform how they are behaving. And it might be a sign of shock here or anxiety that she is nearly revealing some truths that she doesn't want to reveal. Shit, I'm treading too close to the edge here. Because we know that they've found books through our investigation of through the Portuguese police officer's investigation and his book. We discovered that Jerry had found, in the days after Madeleine's disappearance, whilst he's still in Portugal, he'd found copies of English books that were specifically about criminology, about how people look for children who are missing, about how the police investigation will work, like criminology books. He'd got a series of different books. It might be that if you're looking for your daughter, you might want to learn how the police are going to look for her. It might be that. It might be that if you're trying to conceal something from the police, you might want to learn how they're going to behave. So learning how people would behave in these situations is important because you're going to want to present as people that are going through these situations. So it worries me that
that's inevitable. I think any parent who's been through this.
But it also could be that you've been through this and what you've just been through is giving you such 1,000 yards stairs that it's causing a shock and a latent shock to run through you.
Does that, certainly in the first few days. We don't now. We don't now.
And she actually looks quite, her face calms here and she looks almost introspective, thinking. We don't now.
A lot.
So she is thinking of the right word to say here.
We don't now. We're actually a lot stronger, a lot more hopeful now.
And she does. We talked about NLP in the last episode, and I was talking about her looking down and away over here. It's hard to know whether she's looking down and away. Again, the video isn't very good quality, but if she's looking down over here, then it's her own self-talk, things she's saying to herself, the way she's reasoning with herself, like, oh, do you think maybe I did the right thing here or not? I don't know. Like things that go on in your mind. If it's away to the side, it's something she's remembering that has been maybe said or done. So I think this is about her self-talk.
We don't now. We're actually a lot stronger, a lot more hopeful now. And we have to...
And then there's a little flash of surprise.
Now.
A little half shake of the head. See this expression? There it is. It's almost like bargaining. There's a bit of she's going through grief, and bargaining is a phase of grief. But we don't now. I'm almost surprised by that. I mean, I don't know how many days. This was 25th of May. Madeleine disappeared. Let me get the timeline again. I think it was June, wasn't it? No, it can't have been. I just put Madeleine McCann timeline. 3rd of May, the day of her disappearance. And this is sorry, wrong one. This is 25th of May. So she disappeared on the 3rd, and this is 22 days later. So it's not that long. It's a couple of weeks, isn't it? A few weeks. Not that long, but long enough to get a media team, a set of lawyers, a press liaison officer, start building up that fighting fund, write out the contracts with the News of the World, and start to become millionaires. Yeah, it's long enough for you to have done that.
We have to be hopeful. It's what keeps us going and keeps us focused.
And there's even less of this micro expression here. It's even less of it. It's almost like she doesn't have the energy to commit to that one, as she almost dispassionately delivers that last bit.
More hopeful now, and we have to be hopeful.
We have to be hopeful, which is a bit of a surprise to her for some reason, and I think the reason it's a surprise to her is because there is no hope. So we have to be hopeful because we're playing this role, rather than we have to be hopeful because there is really hope.
It's what keeps us going.
It's what keeps us going. And there's a slight shake of the head here, blinking, looking around. I think that's not what keeps you going. I think the possibility of millions and millions of pounds on the horizon is possibly what's keeping you going at the moment.
It keeps us focused.
And keeps us focused.
And what about...
It's quite an interesting choice of words there, isn't it? What keeps us going and keeps us focused. You wouldn't imagine you'd have trouble focusing on your missing daughter. You'd think it would be on your mind every morning, every evening. You know, you'd be focused on that. So you wouldn't need to be kept focused. No one's going to say to you, oh, do you realise that today you're supposed to be looking for Madeleine? And you're like, oh shit, I was just busy doing the crossword. Whoops. Need to be kept focused over here. Like, it'd be on your mind every morning you wake up. If anything, you need some way of defocusing, of shifting that focus to something else so that you can calm down and relax. Like, it would do, you know, it would be on your mind all the time, be a problem. So focused is a strange choice of word.
A lot stronger, a lot more hopeful now. And we have to be hopeful. It's what keeps us going and keeps us focused.
And she says that all with an unblinking, unfazed look. That the last part of the sentence is almost like she's switched on to this autopilot mode of, I think Kate's very good at pushing her feelings down and away. It makes her harder to read. And once she's done that, she's able to deliver words, lines. You know, again, remember both these people are doctors who have to deliver bad news to people, and they have to be able to just say the words, even if sometimes when you're saying those hard to say words, you have to push down your human feelings and get through it.
And we have to be hopeful. It's what keeps us going and keeps us focused.
And what about Sean and Emily? What have you said?
There's a little face here for Sean and Emily. That's again, she's showing us her first. They're not proper smiles, they're not full smiles, but they are sort of, aren't they? Bit of a smug smile here, bit of a self-satisfaction in some way. She's still got them. They can still make her happy. You know, that must have been talked about as well, mustn't it? Madeleine's gone, but we've still got Sean and Emily, and it's important to stay focused for them and on them. So maybe that's what she's thinking.
To them about their big sister.
And he asks, what have you told them about their big sister?
Emily, what have you said to them about their big sister?
What have you said to them about their big sister? So now she looks... I'll bring up the NLP because I think it is interesting, although we don't stick to it these days. It has been poo-pooed a little bit by some of the more modern psychologists. It's a tiny one. But it's interesting, isn't it, that she's looking into constructed visual, constructed auditory. I wonder if I can get a big one of those for you. Tools, size, large. I need this sometimes. I can't remember it off the top of my head every time. You know, body language like this is really interesting because it's not that you can simply do this. Like, if you're talking to, like, I do these videos, and if I was sat here talking to you, I wouldn't be able to keep up with all the stuff you're doing. It would be happening too fast. I'd get feelings, I'd get vibes, and sometimes I'd say, oh look, you're looking over here while you're saying that, maybe. But really, I need the ability to slow it down, pause it, refer to things. Over here though, this is the problem side. Over this side is a good side. Visualizing remembered, auditory recalled. I'm remembering something I saw, I'm remembering something I heard. And down here, this one where the pen is, we said earlier, it's about self-talk, it's about auditory digital, which means like the way you construct words in your head. So it might be that you're building up the sentences you're about to say and listening to them before you say them in your head, or it might be that you've heard someone say something and you're remembering the way they said it, their auditory, and then the way you felt when they said it down here maybe. Or kinesthetic is feelings. These, I'm blurring the lines a little bit, aren't I? This is why maybe these are not so useful, these cues. But if you're referring to what you said to yourself in your head, I was going to tell him this, or maybe I should have said that. I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing here. Maybe you are. You're doing the right thing. You know, these sort of conversations in your head that go on subconsciously, that's also okay. If you're telling me something that happened and you're referring to your self-talk, there's positives and negatives, but this side mainly positive, that other side mainly negative. Visualizing, constructing, or lying. Ooh. Making something up that you think you like, making up an image and then describing it. Auditory, constructing sounds, making something up in your head, the way it sounds. The way it sounds. I've never, like, Superman's not real, is he? But if I were to think about how Superman, I'm going to try, I don't know what I'm doing with my eyes now, but how Superman might sound when he's flying through the air, whoosh, I might look over there. Kinesthetic, feeling, it says feeling things out there. Kinesthetic is when you do something the way it feels to do it. So this is also referred to on the more classic chart as just kinesthetic, isn't it? Where's my more classic chart? I've lost my pictures. I've lost my pictures. This one says feelings, emotionals, tactile sensations. Is your nose cold? It's how things feel, so it's not such a problem with kinesthetic either. But Kate here is looking into either kinesthetic, how it feels, or...
They're really good. I mean, they're at an age really where they're...
What's it like to tell them? What have you told them about Madeleine?
Them about their big sister.
She looks over this way. Again, it could be kinesthetic, how you feel to do things, how it felt to tell them stuff, or how it feels to be around them, what it's like picking them up and burping them. You know, she's thinking about the feelings of what it's like to physically interact with these things. She's not necessarily looking at the words that she said or the sound of the words she said. Auditory constructing sounds, auditory record sound. She's not looking at these sort of things. So she's going into her emotional and physical response, like her physical feelings, which might be that if you're troubled by all these emotional problems, physically picking up a child and, you know, doing the actual physical work with it might be something that grounds you in reality and is more of a mindfulness thing. She might find that soothing.
About their big sister.
They're really good. I mean,
and then she pulls her face as well because I don't know really. I don't know. The answer to the question is I haven't told them anything about their big sister because they're just twins. Sorry, they're just, how old are they at this point? They're like in baby buggies. They're in baby cots. They're not, you know, you don't reason with them and explain things to them. They don't know anything.
Said to them about their big sister.
Really good. I mean, they're at an age really where they're still quite young and...
Shrug of the shoulders there. That was quite a big, obvious body language sign. I don't know. I haven't told them anything about their big sister. I don't have to. That's not on like my top list of concerns. I don't know.
And I guess it hasn't had the same impact on them as if they were a little bit older. They do talk about Madeleine.
So that rang really true, didn't it? Bear in mind, I have watched this before, but I don't remember exactly what they're going to say. But it's always good when I make a bit of conjecture and then it rings true with what they say. So I said she was sort of like, I haven't told them. And then she confirms that by saying they're not at the age where they can really understand, which is what I was saying, isn't it?
I guess it hasn't had the same impact on them as if they were a little bit older. They do talk about Madeleine. They pick up things and say Madeleine's, you know, and that's fine, but they're really...
They pick up, okay, this is quite big, isn't it, actually?
Pick up things and say Madeleine.
They pick up things and say, Madeleine's. So they do talk about her. And she's looking, again, we'll do the neuro-linguistic programming eyes again. Visual constructed, seeing images of things never seen before, or things... open image in a new tab. Visual constructed. Making up pictures. That's a bit of a worry, isn't it? Constructed or lying? Visual constructed or lying? Like, they tend to say this would be troubling. This big, thoughtful look into the place of your brain where you make up pictures.
They pick up things and say Madeleine's, you know, and that's fine. But
And that's fine.
they're really good.
But they're really good. And while she's closing her eyes, she is looking over into the constructed part of the brain as well. I mean, she's trying to construct an answer to a question, but I think she might be embellishing a little bit here. They pick up things and say Madeleine's. I don't know if they do that. Pretty sure. In fact, I'm pretty sure they don't. Because when you think about it, we're 20 days after the event, yeah? Is there anything of Madeleine's just kicking around? Probably not, eh? You know, her toys are going to not be accessible to these children because they're different age ranges, I would assume, unless it's a soft toy. But we know that Cuddle Cat was used as part of the Find Madeleine campaign. We know that her clothes were given over to the police. Like, what things of Madeleine's are they picking up and going, Madeleine's? Like these children that are... I'm going to have to know exactly the ages now. How old were Madeleine's siblings? How old are Madeleine's siblings? They were 2 years old at the time of her disappearance. They could pick things up and say words. They were 2 years old. Is that right? They were sleeping in cots. You sleep in a cot when you're 2? They're about 17 now. It says they were 2 years old. 18 months. I've got a friend who's got an 18-month-old around the corner and they're learning to talk and do stuff. Well, it's possible they could be picking up her stuff and saying Madeleine's. It's quite a complex word, Madeleine, but it would have been a regular word around the house, wouldn't it? But it's also quite unlikely, bearing in mind that Madeleine's gone missing and her items of her personal property have been either used in the investigation or kept very careful by her parents because, you know, memories.
They're still quite young, and I guess it hasn't had the same impact on them as if they were a little bit older.
And interestingly, it hasn't had the same impact on them as if they were a little bit older. Not the same impact on them as it has on us. Like on me, it's been a devastating impact, but on them, not so much. They haven't had the same impact on them as if it might when they're older, if they were older. So that's interesting that she hasn't. I would say initially you would register that impact yourself. You'd be like, oh, it hasn't had the same impact on them as it has on me. But the impact things have had on her has been different because it's not been, you know, if it was just she's gone missing, we're upset, then the impact would be on me as well as you in the same way. But you haven't had the same impact, you couldn't understand. Whereas what I'm thinking is, if what happened to me is, like, if Madeleine, God, you know, unfortunately was died in the hotel room, then the impact it had on me would be different to the impact it had on you, because you don't know the full story and you don't know what I've been through. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it hasn't had the same impact on me as you, because it's almost like a revelation of the truth of in my mind, the reason it's had a different impact is because we've done different things. I've been through the lies, you haven't seen the truth of the lies. So I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say we're having different impacts here. It would highlight the fact that there's an incongruence in the things that I've seen. So I'd probably say something different there. Hasn't had the same impact on them as it has if they were older. So she's keeping it all distance from her and all on them. Palumbo says, an interview with Skavlan, which is, I like that Swedish TV, Skavlan. I've watched a couple of their interviews with other people. Kate states the twins recalled things prior to 2007. If that's the case, they should have been asked, did you see someone in the room? Yeah, there would be witnesses. They're the only witnesses, aren't they? But I mean, that is... Do you remember being 2 years old? Do you remember anything of when you were 2 years old? If you were asked to give an account of, you know, a certain date in May on a certain holiday when you were 2 years old, would you be able to give any account? I certainly wouldn't. Absolutely not. I mean, I can remember the occasional thing from my childhood like that because it was a big thing. It might have been a Christmas thing, and we've got photos of it. Generally, I couldn't give you an account of what happened in May when I was 2 years old. Absolutely not. So it's strange that she should say it as well, isn't it? Strange. I mean, maybe they recall some things prior to 2007, like I once had a big teddy bear, or do you know what I mean? But generally, no.
They do talk about Madeleine.
She's shaking her head throughout this. They don't talk about Madeleine.
So they do talk about Madeleine. They pick up things and say Madeleine's, you know.
I don't believe that at all. I think she just made that up. I don't know why she did.
And that's fine, but they're...
And that's fine. And like she puts a stopper on that, and that's fine. We'll say that's fine and leave it alone. We won't go anywhere near that anymore further. I'm starting to dig myself into a hole here.
really good.
So she just stops. Maybe it was, again, we talked last time about the idea of the media being involved. 20 days later, you've got your media team involved. Maybe we're making up some answers for certain questions to inspire some or elicit some sympathy from the rest of the world. Maybe that's a media response. I don't know. It looks like she had a thought and made it up. Went a bit off the rails there.
They do talk about Madeleine. They pick up things and say Madeleine's, you know, and that's fine, but they're really good.
I think that's, you know, something that...
It does annoy me, I said it last time, that they only had this one camera for this interview and they panned into the faces, you know, zoomed in. Now having to pan across to this other face, we don't get to see the immediate response from Jerry as Kate is speaking, but...
As many people have said...
And he felt compelled to break in there. I mean, when she this is the case when they do this. If they're guilty, then one of them will start saying something and the other one will think, fuck, don't say that. You're going off the rails here. They might squeeze their hand, they might interject. You know what I mean? If they're guilty. If they're not, if they're innocent, then they'll let the other speak and then they'll offer some comfort. Now, if I was sitting next to my wife and we'd lost our child and I was listening to her speak about the twins and they sometimes say Madeleine, at the moment she said they sometimes say Madeleine, I'd be like, oh, that's going to hurt when you say that. I'm going to put my arm on you there. I'm going to just give you a bit of extra support. Do you know what I mean? If you're innocent, you would let the other person speak and offer comfort and not be desperate to say your bit. You'd be more desperate to comfort them. If you're guilty, then as they're speaking, you're analysing what they say and worrying about how guilty or innocent it makes you sound and interjecting when you think this is going wrong. I need to take over here. You shut up now. Two different ways to behave.
And that's fine, but they're really good.
And notice that, you know, as she finishes this, I was saying she might be looking into her feelings.
And that's fine, but
or her constructed ideas, looking over there. It's only halfway through a blink, but we see it here. And then we see her shut down, blink, long time, closed mouth, nod, nod. I think that when she's looking this direction, she's actually looking at Jerry. He's next to her. You know when you're sitting next to someone, you can't look in their face unless you crane round and have a look. Like that. You can't, but you sense them next to you. You're holding hands. Maybe he's given her a signal here, whether it be a squeeze of the hand or something to say, shut the fuck up now. You're going off the script. I'll interject here. And she shuts down to allow him to take over. Couples often have this automated. They often do it without thinking. You know, one will finish the other sentences and the other one will just shut down. It's not like an organised, deliberate thing. It's that you've been a couple for long enough and you know when they're going to take over and start saying that. So you might have told the story a couple of times and it might be their turn to talk, if you know what I mean. So you just sort of naturally do it. So it's easy to read each other's signals as a couple. You'd remember a stranger in the room if she was abducted. Maybe. I don't remember. Again, being 2 years old, I can't say that I confidently remember anything, but how'd you go about drugging someone? You'd have to do it physically or without knowledge. I'm suggesting, me personally, I'm saying that if Kate drugged her own children, then she would have done it as a matter of, not every day, not a matter of course, but it would be somewhat of a routine. That Madeleine was known for being unruly and demonstrative at bedtimes, so one of the tools in the kit to help her get to sleep would be, you know, if she doesn't, first of all, it's a bedtime story and a cup of cocoa, and if she doesn't settle, then sometimes we give her this, and it might be a cough medicine, or it might be some other form of drug with a sedative effect, like antihistamine sometimes has, or is it the other way around? Anyway, look, it's like some other drugs have a slightly sedative effect, but then might be quite benign. And that you do give children cough medicine and cow pollen, Benadryl and things like this to settle them sometimes. So I think it would have been as part of some sort of routine like this. And I would then think that, like we talked about this in the other episodes, but in some way it went wrong when she returned to the apartment. She's discovered Madeleine in some form of distress. She's tried to revive her. That's gone wrong. She's died. She might have tried to give a CPR, which is most likely is that Madeleine was lying on the floor behind the sofa, was given CPR, as we see the cough spatter on the walls with the fluid, which was later confirmed to be DNA, very, very close match. So, you know, either her or one of the children was coughing blood onto the walls from a prone position, which would be in keeping with CPR on the chest. That's in the other episodes, of course, if you want to go into that. But yeah, so that's why I think that drugging was done with knowledge, as a, not like in a horrible, oh, you've been drugged, but in a sort of more routine. Both of them medical professionals, both of them more desensitized to the use of drugs, medical drugs, for these reasons, because they use them all the time, prescribe them all the time. Both of them looking for a bit of an easier time of things. It was a bit of an exceptional circumstance because they're out on holiday. Maybe Madeleine was particularly demonstrative that night. I don't know, but that's where I feel I get those ideas from.
You know, and that's fine, but they're
and that's fine. And then her expression actually drops away as well. Like, she was finding some happiness, some more normality, talking about the twins. Even if I conject that she made that up, that bit.
Madeleine's, you know, and that's fine.
But there's a half shoulder shrug as well, because he's like reasoning it out. Is this okay that I've said this? Well, it sounds all right.
But they're really good.
And then Jerry's pipe, like at this moment, when she looks over to him, I think Jerry's done something. I can't see. Either squeezed her hand or something, and it shut her down. Look.
They're really good.
I think that's,
and he takes over. And she continues with the blinking. It's really interesting that either of them, they might be holding back tears, you know, it might be that, but when either of them are not speaking and allowing the other to speak, there's a lot of this stressed blinking. There's a lot of it.
As many people have said to us, that this is...
And he doesn't even confidently say the first thing in his mind.
Something that...
I'm going to let it run a little bit more, because I do have a tendency to really break it up, don't I? But let's run it a little bit and hear them talking for a bit, and then I'll carry on breaking it down. You're talking about an abductor, right? Yeah, I don't believe there was one. And so I don't know if you believe either, but I think I'm agreeing with you now, what you say. Yeah, the twins may have been drugged by it. So if they'd seen the abductor giving them the drug, I see what you mean there now, yeah. If there was an abductor, then the twins would probably remember somebody that's not their parent or caregiver waking them up to administer the drug. I see what you mean there now. Obviously, I personally don't think there was an abductor. I think it would be a 1 in a bajillion chance that not only, like, we know from statistical evidence that it's very unlikely. 90% of these crimes are committed by close family. So yeah, I personally don't think there was. So I agree with what you're saying, that there'd have to be these other factors that come into it if the abductor had done this. If the abductor had done XYZ, then we'd need to be able to explain why XYZ, and we don't even get there because it gets complicated. Yeah, this is one of the things I don't tend to do. I don't tend to go down rabbit holes and say, well, maybe this and maybe that. I want to know the facts. I want to see their faces. I want to be able to read my inferences from the things they've said and take my building of the framework of the case from the evidence that was literally reported by the police. So we've got the cadaver dog evidence. We've seen in the previous episodes the dog sniffer dogs. So we've got a good deal of evidence, and we've got the things they say. And
that's fine, but they're really good.
I think that's, you know, something that is, many people have said to us that this is a parent's worst nightmare, and it is. It truly is, and it's as bad as you can possibly imagine. But
sorry, I have to keep breaking it up. That was a standout one, though. It's as bad as you could possibly imagine. Is it? Because the worst thing I could possibly imagine is my daughter was dead. Like, if she was still alive and I was going to find her, that wouldn't be the worst thing I could possibly imagine. Knowing she was missing would feel fucking horrendous, but having the hope that you're going to find her is slightly better than she is definitely dead. So that's a bit of a standout one to me. I'll let him run a little bit.
As many people have said to us that this is a parent's worst nightmare, and it is. It truly is, and it's as bad as you can possibly imagine. But, you know, if all 3 of the children had been taken, it could have been even worse than your worst nightmare. And we've got to be strong for them. You know, they're here. They do bring you back to earth. And we cannot, you know, grieve. One, we did grieve, of course we grieve, but ultimately we need to be in control so that we can influence and help in any way possible. Not just Sean and Amelie, but the investigation.
And because of them...
That was horrific from Jerry. That was the worst answer I've ever seen him give to a question in all the years I've been watching these interviews, that off the top of my head. Like, that was horrific.
As many people have said to us that this is a parent's worst nightmare.
Many people have said to us that this is a parent's worst nightmare. Who is saying this to you? You've got your media team, haven't you? And he's very tense around the mouth.
And it is.
And it is.
It truly is, and it's as bad as you can possibly imagine, but...
And he kind of looks at Kate when he says it's as bad as you could possibly imagine.
As many people have said to us that this is a parent's worst nightmare, and it is.
And it is.
It truly is.
It truly is. It's obviously not, is it? Remember, because he's about to say that it could get worse. The twins could have been gone as well, so he's about to say it could get worse. So he's doing that expression that I say is worrisome. You know, oh, it is, truly. The eyebrows go up. There's a slow blink. You know, it's gone from this stern angry. Remember, he's contentious with this interviewer. He's got a bad vibe about this interviewer. The interviewer's asking him questions and it makes him angry. And then sometimes he changes his face into a much more friendly and open expression. And his eyes are still dead, but he does the eyebrows and the, you know, believe me expression. So I don't like the way that changes. I don't think it sings with his true feelings.
It truly is, and it's as bad as you can possibly...
And when he's saying it's as bad as you could possibly imagine, he has to look away from the interview. He can't maintain eye contact, or he's looking at Kate. If he's looking at Kate, he's blaming her. You know, it's as bad as you could possibly imagine. You know, like if you've done something... I remember this, right? If you've done something naughty and your parents are brought into the headmaster's office and they're talking about you and you're sat there, and when they say, God, he did this naughty thing, like they sort of look at you slightly, don't they? You know, it's as bad as we could possibly imagine. And you know, then back to the headmaster, like, they only look at you for a slight, you know, like, because the guilt lies with you. So I think the guilt in Jerry's mind lies with Kate. I think that she was the one that did whatever and discovered it. He's trying to be the clean-up guy, remember? That's my conjecture here. So as bad as you could put, you know,
imagine, but
and he looks away from Kate now as well while he takes this breath.
You know,
while he tries to prepare himself for what's about to come. And I think this is exactly what happened, is he had to think, oh, you fucking fucked this up, you fucking, oh my God, right, I'm going to take it. And like, he has to look away from the situation to draw the strength to pull himself together to deal with this shit. But it's also looking down into that area that we talked about earlier about kinesthetic, doing things, physically doing things with your hands. And so that's another concern of mine about him being the clean-up crew, because he's looking down into that place that he might be remembering the process of the things he had to do.
If all three of the children had been taken.
But he turns confidently and aggressively again to the interviewer. But these words, I believe, were what he said to Kate, you know, or a way he's bargaining with Kate and the world. You know what I mean? It's a strange thing to say. A minute ago, the reason it's strange is because just a second ago, it was the worst thing in the world that Madeleine is disappeared. We don't know what's happened to her. She might be just safely around the corner playing with some, you know, it's not likely 20 days later that she's in a good place, is it? But it's possible, right, that she went and got lost and is with some nice people who just didn't see the news and they live in a caravan. Like, you'd be hoping for the best, wouldn't you? But it's unlikely. But you know, it's possible. You don't know she's dead if she's missing. Whereas if you know that she's dead, that's something different, isn't it?
You know, if all three of the children had been taken.
If all three of the children had been taken. Now, I believe that he uses this language, taken, gone. He doesn't say abducted or missing, stolen. Stolen might still work, but he says taken. Taken's a word that you would say if you're religious and God took someone. Because they died, you say God took them to heaven. They were taken by God. Been taken, gone. It's almost like the language of someone who buffers the harshness of the reality of the world with that religious aspect. And I think this was Jerry's, remember, I think this was Jerry's proposition to Kate, which is that Madeleine's gone, she's been taken by God, but if we tell everyone, then we're going to lose the other children as well. They're going to be taken by the social services. We're going to be in trouble. So you've got to keep quiet about it. We'll dispose of her body. We're doctors, we're good people. And a few days later, as the news of the world and the money starts coming in. It starts being, look, this is Madeleine's gift to us from heaven. We must have done the right thing because we're now getting rich. Madeleine's gift to us from heaven is that she's making us rich through the Madeleine Fund. It's called the Madeleine Fund, isn't it? So now she's giving this gift to us from heaven that's going to make our lives wonderful. And, you know, they're harsh and horrible because we had this problem that she's dead. But on the other side of the coin, we can look after the twins and we can be millionaires. We'll go and meet the Pope. So that's how I think he reasoned it out with Kate. You know, there's this religious aspect to it that they are strongly Anglican religious, and she's got the Bible next to her bed and stuff. You know, there's this religious aspect to it that it's a higher power, higher than courts, higher than police. Our deal is made with God, and no one can touch us but God. And the proof of the situation is bearing out, because if God wanted us to be in trouble, he'd put us in trouble, and God knows we're good people, so he's protecting us. I think that's how it's all worked out. So Kate doesn't have to just keep quiet because Jerry's telling her to. She has to keep quiet because involved in her conscience is the fact she's guilty and God is involved. So he uses the word taken rather than if the twins had been killed, or if the twins had been abducted, or if the twins had been, you know, there are other words he could use.
You know, if all three of the children had been taken, it could have been even worse than your worst nightmare.
It could have been worse than your worst nightmare. Well, no, it's worse than your worst nightmare. How do you get worse than your worst nightmare? That would be your worst nightmare then. So your previous worst nightmare, whatever's really happening, is not your worst nightmare now. It's a strange, you know, he's getting himself tangled in his own words.
It could have been even worse than your worst nightmare. And we've got to be strong for them. You know, they're here. They do bring you back to earth.
They do bring you back to earth. Again, the sort of language that we're talking about, angels in heaven bringing you back to earth. You can't bring Madeleine back to earth. She's up in heaven now. That language, it's been used for the twins, but, you know, we're talking about this whole thing, aren't we? It's a strange use of language to me. I was saying it earlier about, it's like mindfulness, isn't it? I was saying she was smiling and thinking about how she was feeling when she was doing things with the twins. It's reality. It brings you back to reality, I might say. I might say it brings you back to reality, because this might seem totally unreal to me, all this. I mean, that would still sound kind of bad, because I'm saying reality, unreality, fallacies, making things up. But it'd bring you back to reality. He says earth. And that's what I think as well, is that at the time, all this stuff was up in the air. But he said, look, the twins are still here. They're still alive. We've got to get on with this. Back to reality, back to earth.
And we cannot, you know, grieve.
And we cannot, there's a lot of blinking, and he says, you know, which sometimes, I say it a lot, lots of people say it a lot, don't they, you know. Sometimes it's just said to fill time, a filler, like you know, some people use it as a filler, which is a natural form of human speech where the words are coming to us and we don't want to let someone else take over in the conversation, so we just make it clear, you know, that we're still talking, or, you know, I'm thinking, but, you know, keep listening to me. There's that. But there can also be a subconscious way of using it to bring someone else onto your side, you know, I know, you know, we're on the same page, page here. So he's stumbling over these words, and he's not stumbling over them literally, but he's finding this difficult, this construction of this sentence, you know, wants you to agree with him and be on his side.
We cannot, you know, grieve.
We cannot, you know, grieve. Bear in mind, this is a doctor, you know, I just said it then, you know, but a doctor who is used to using careful words and not used to throwing your nose around, probably. We cannot grieve. What an awful thing to say. Like, you wouldn't grieve, you're hoping to find her. That's the whole point of the interview. 20 days in, you're thinking, I'll do this big telly interview, and this could be the... I apologise if I've kicked the microphone wire. If you hear it going, tell me. You'd be doing the big telly interview because you'd want people to find, like, this could uncover a clue, and then you find it. You're thinking, I'll do this telly interview, and then, you know, it's like buying lottery tickets. In your heart of hearts, you'd be hoping that at the end of the interview, you'd say, how long is this going to take before it gets on the telly and people can see it? I know there's been a lot of information about Madeleine, but this could be the one that unlocks the thing. So, and then you'd be ringing them up the next day saying, has it been on the, like, what channel is it on? You know, tell me, so you can watch it, so you can video it, so you can send it out to everyone, you know, elsewhere. We've done this interview, have you seen it? We've done this interview, have you seen it? Help find Madeleine. And then once it's been out on the telly, you'd be looking at the phones. I hope someone rings. Has anyone seen her? We did this interview, it might pay off. I won't be thinking about my process of grieving. Grieving's when people are dead, mate. So no wonder you can't grieve. She's not dead, apparently.
Back to earth, and we cannot, you know, grieve. One, we did grieve, of course we grieved.
Oh, we did grieve, of course we grieve. What? What? I mean, I know you can suffer different things in life and grief can be applied to it. Of course. You know, my computer breaks down, I could grieve for that. That's more like a loss, isn't it? A loss, a defeat, some form of sadness you can grieve. Absolutely, I'm human, I'm down with all the feelings. And your daughter's missing for 20 days, you might start grieving in some way. But I don't think you call it grief. And certainly not in an interview. I don't think grief would be mentioned twice in close succession like this. It's fucking weird, isn't it? If you're hoping to find your daughter. All the pictures behind you, this is one of these appeal videos. It's one of these appeals, and now we're talking about your process of grief. And like I said, this would have been the conversation if she's dead and he's discovered, he's gone in the hotel room and Kate's there crying and dead Madeleine on the floor, and what the fuck's happened here? Listen, we can't grieve right now, we've got to get on with certain shit. You know, of course we can grieve privately, but right now we've got to get on with some shit, and we can't be like, you know, the process of grieving is going to have to come a little bit later, Kate, because we've got to sort this shit out. I've got to get control of this situation so you don't lose the kids, so we don't go to jail, you know, and all this business. So why is he talking about grieving?
Them, you know, they're here. They do bring you back to earth, and we cannot, you know, grieve. One, we did grieve, of course we grieve, but ultimately we need to be in control so that we...
Be in control, a big thing about Jerry. What did I just say? Taking control of the situation.
Need to be in control so that we can influence.
Influence. Now this is before the time of influencers. This is 2007. Influencers wasn't a big phrase going around. So they need to be in control. When he's saying they, he's talking about him and Kate, but really he's talking about him. Because when you talk about people as a couple, even if I were to talk about myself and I don't have a girlfriend at the moment, but you know, me and a couple, I would be talking about my feelings and ideas and applying it to them. I wouldn't be able to look in their head and speak for them. If I wanted to do that, I'd have to say, what do you think about this? Do you, you know, and agree and bring out someone else's ideas. So saying we need to be in control is my idea of what I think we need to do. We need to be in control. And I would initially have said that Jerry thought he needed to be in control so that the situation doesn't fall apart, so that we can cover it up, so that we can dispose of the body without being caught, so that we don't lose our jobs as doctors, so that we don't lose our children to the social services. I need to control this situation. But now he's saying something that's very worrying, like very worrying.
So that we can influence.
So that we can influence. We can influence. This is before influencers. Do you know what I mean? It's before the time of influence. He's not talking about media influence so that we can influence, you know, and maybe sell some products. He's not talking about that. This is the truest form of the word influence. He changes it. He doesn't want to use that word. That's the wrong word.
And help.
And help. Help.
In any way possible. Not just...
In any way possible. And then he cuts himself off there.
Possible. Not just Sean and Amelie, but the investigation.
That's it. It's the investigation. Not Sean and Amelie. We're asking questions about the twins, aren't we? We're asking about the twins. How are the twins? Because Madeleine's been missing for 20 days. Are the twins okay?
And help in any way.
Are the twins okay, Jerry? Are the twins okay?
We did grieve, of course we grieve, but...
We did grieve, of course we grieve.
Ultimately, we need to be in control.
We need to be in control. Are the twins okay?
So that we can influence.
We need to be in control so that we can look after the twins. That's what you'd say. I need to pull my shit together because these kids need feeding. You know, they still need feeding, they still need cleaning, their lives are going on routine. And I'm out of my head with worry. I can't follow the routine, but I need to for these kids. I need to create some stability in their life. And what's Jerry saying? He needs to be able to influence
and help in any way possible. Not just Sean and Amelie, but
influence
the investigation.
The investigation. Jerry wants to influence the investigation. He just said it. This isn't body language now. This is textual analysis. This is what he fucking said. Jerry needs to be in control so he can influence and help the investigation.
Be in control.
In control.
So we can influence.
So that we can influence.
And help in any way possible. Not just Sean and Amelie, but the investigation.
The investigation. And he does one micro expression when he says it, which is this surprised look. It's not believe me trying to convince the other person. It's a slight raise of the eyes and a look off because he's surprising himself that, again, he's going off the script. He's not saying what the media team has told him to say. He thinks he's a bit clever and he said something that, oh shit, I've said that. When you're trying to cover stuff up, it's on your mind. So it comes out. And then when it comes out, you're surprised because you're not supposed to be saying these things. This is self-snitching and you have to self-edit. And in order to self-edit, you have to self-audit, and you surprise yourself when you say idiot things like this by mistake because it's on your mind.
Not just Sean and Amelie, but the investigation. The
investigation. You want to influence the investigation. At what point would you need to influence the investigation? 20 days after the disappearance of your daughter, it's time to do a television interview to explain to the world that you're trying to influence the investigation. You're trying to what? I'll tell you what, Jerry, at the end of that, once you've said that, what you're going to want to do is maintain eye contact and not look too shifty, aren't you? There is a betrayal of a bit of almost bloodshot in this eye, and it was almost disconnected when he looked off. There was almost a disconnection with it. It does worry me sometimes that the eyes don't look in the same place. That can be natural. Some people can have a bit of a sleepy eye, a wonky eye, but quite often if you've taken narcotics, it can happen. Certain narcotics, ecstasy, cocaine, can do that with your eyes. They can cause them to appear to disconnect in ways like that. It might just be that he's drifting into the distance and he's, it might be an artifact of the poor quality image. It might just be that he's drifting into the distance. But it's almost like a disconnect between the two eyes. And the one maybe is a bit more, like this side of his face is a bit more really traumatized and sad. And the other side is the solid control, like I've got control of this situation. I mean, again, Kate does this. It's almost like they're broken by this whole process in ways, and you would be.
Investigation.
But he wants to influence the investigation. Then it cuts away, so I don't get to see his, how he responds to his own words, whether there's a big dry swallow coming or whether Kate's squeezing his hand. But isn't it amazing that Jerry wants to influence the investigation? I just want to stay on that for a little minute. It's like an admission of guilt, because influencing the investigation should show. There's no way. The only way I could, and I'm trying to create a world where Jerry is innocent here and his words are innocent. The only way is if he perceives the investigation is going wrong and there's a problem and they're not doing it properly, so he needs to influence them to help them do it properly. But what kind of world are we living in where Dr. Jerry thinks that both the Portuguese and at this point 20 days later the British as well, 2 full police squads plus Interpol and all that, why does he think he needs to influence them? How is he influencing them and to what end? It's just fucking worrisome, isn't it?
And because of them,
he doesn't pick up on it.
The day may come when you have to leave here and go back to the UK. I know you've got no plans to do so at the moment. But how do you think you're going to feel if that day comes and you have to go to the airport? And how do you think the day comes if you have to go to the airport? Now, if Madeleine is alive and you're looking for her, it's going to be fucking hell. I'm not going to want to leave Portugal. I'm still looking. I'm not ready to go. If she's dead and you're trying to move past it in some way, mentally, emotionally, literally, then you'd want to get home. You'd be looking forward to it. To be honest, even if you're still looking for Madeleine, you would want to get home. It's going to seem like a much more, just the concept of home is going to seem like a much more pleasant
idea in your mind, isn't it? Home, oh, my own bed, back before this all happened. But then there's also the possibility of facing your family and friends when you get home. So if they're going to be supportive and helpful, good, or if you've got a guilty conscience, maybe bad. Let's see how they react.
Fly back.
I can't think about that, Ian, to be honest. I can't think about going home without Madeleine. So.
She's shaking her head when she says it, which could be acceptable, because it could be, I can't think about it, I'm not going to go home without Madeleine. Or it could be, you know, shaking her head in like that she doesn't agree with what she's saying, but she's saying the right things.
I can't think about that, Ian, to be honest. I can't think about...
She calls him by his name as well, Ian, which is strange in an interview like this.
I can't think about that, Ian, to be honest. I can't think about going home without Madeleine.
And she does that little eyebrow raise, eyes closed look, which I don't like. I find it to be very... it's only one expression, one micro expression, so I'd like to see more to confirm that this is a lie. But I could even believe her, actually. I can't think about it. The question is, do you want to go home? Maybe she can't. Maybe she's got too much on her mind to even think about that. There is a slight crack of a smile here. It's not really a smile. I just think she's been given the answer. I think this is one of those where Ian, who she obviously knows, she calls him by his name now, Ian, like this is one of those where they've had the question in advance, so they've written the answer for her, and she's doing it almost verbatim as wrote.
Day comes and you have to go to the airport and fly back.
I can't think about that.
And also, because Jerry looks to her, this is that thing I said earlier about referring to each other. He asked the question,
go to the airport. And
then Jerry, who's going to answer? How do we know who's going to answer? We're a couple. Like, is there no subconscious signal of, do you want to take that one? Do you want to take that? You know, you'd actually look your partner in the face and maybe raise your eyebrows. Do you want to answer that? But instead, he just does like a half look like that. She licks her lips. You can't really see it. She's just licking her lips. So that says to me, we've prepared this. We know who's going to answer. Jerry knows Kate's about to start speaking, so he's not like turning and asking, are you going to answer this one? He's just, you know, if you're like waiting for someone to deliver their lines in the school play, you all look at them. It's your turn. He's looking at her, it's your turn. And she's licking her lips because it's my turn, I'm about to speak. I'm getting ready to speak. You know, there's a desire to lubricate the mouth. I don't think that's a bit of body language, really, of defiance necessarily. It's hard to see anyway. But there's a half smile. There's a slight half smile. I can't. It's not a big smile, but I think this is, again, I think that's because this is prepared, and there's a sort of not happy smile that we're in safe territory here. We know the right answer, and it's almost like you know this is prepared, interviewer. I know this is prepared. The people out there don't know it's prepared, but there's a half smile of semi-confidence that, oh, this is one that I know. We've been through this one. So
airport and fly back.
I can't think about that, Ian, to be honest. I can't think about going home without Madeleine.
And that's the right answer, isn't it? So it's interesting she adds so.
I can't think about going home without Madeleine.
Very David Brent. So, as if you've made a point that you feel that confident about, that the so is usually to set up another further point, isn't it? So but so whatever you think, I've already so there, so what, so this, so it's almost demonstrative. David Brent does it a lot. I don't want to bring up David Brent and turn to comedy during this, but you'll remember that David Brent says so at the end of his sentences and just peters out and leaves the so hanging in the air. And she's done the same here, which is a bit of a worry. It makes me feel that this is a contrived media answer. So she instinctively wants to add more, but all she adds is the so, and won't let her brain saying you could keep talking here, but her, you know, the answer stops.
We're with you as always. How did that start, and what comfort does it bring you?
Now, again, if you're doing an interview with these people and you want to see these different things, I mean, this is all the way back in 2007. These people should have known, though. Shoot it in a wide so we can see these things. Or, you know, you need two cameras, don't you, really? Like, basic. So now we're going to lose the ability to follow the body language necessarily when they do this, but we'll just watch it and see what happens.
Think about going home without Madeleine. So.
I notice you've got Madeleine's cuddly toy with you.
Notice how stony she goes after that so.
I notice you've got...
Like, it's almost like void of expression, isn't it? No micro expression, no nothing. So I wonder what's going on in her head there.
Madeleine's cuddly toy with you as always. How did that start?
It's almost as if they're, like I said, because they've prepared this and been through it and media trained it, it's almost as if she's waiting for this next question, which is going to be this difficult thing about the cuddle cat. So it's almost as if she's steeled and prepared for the next question.
I notice you've got Madeleine's cuddly toy with you as always. How did that start, and what comfort does it bring you?
Where did it come from? Or?
No, how did the idea come to just have it in your hands all the time?
Well, it's something that Madeleine has with her every night, and if she's upset or not well, then she has Cuddle Cat. And so it provided me with a little bit of comfort. It's something of Madeleine close to me.
There's positive there. It's something that Madeleine has every night. It's positive because she's not referring to her in the past tense. But it's strange because she doesn't have this. I'm holding it. So it would be something she had every night. She doesn't have it now. Even if she's not dead, it would still be a past tense item. So it's a strange use of the language.
This is international.
Provided me with a little bit of comfort. It's something of Madeleine close to me.
It's something of Madeleine close to me.
This is International Missing Children.
And we can all understand that. That seems all like straightforward, but she says it so dispassionately. I can't get much from it because the camera panned around.
Day. I mean, I guess Madeleine's had more publicity than just about every missing child in the world put together. I'm sure you're very grateful for that. Why do you think it has provoked such enormous public support, of which I don't think we've ever seen before?
So, two answers here. I guess one answer here. The reason it's provoked such like huge public support, the honest answer is the News of the World have got involved and they're pumping out the story and selling papers off it, and it's become like a monster. It's like taking on a life of its own, the whole story. The News of the World have got involved. The Daily Mail are involved in our camp, pumping out the story. That's why. People can identify with the idea. Shouldn't be too hard an answer. Whatever it is, it's trouble for Kate.
I don't think we've ever seen before.
No, it's a micro expression again, but the furrowing in the brow, the looking down.
Vote such enormous public support, of which
enormous
I don't
public
think we've ever
support
seen before.
I think there's
lots of blinking from Kate, and now it's Jerry's turn.
a conglomeration of circumstances that have come together in this situation. The fact that we're on holiday.
He does this again, worrying look towards Kate. There's a conglomeration of circumstances that have come together
In this situation.
And he like looks aside to Kate again. It's almost to me as if he's ascribing the guilt to her every time. Like this situation he's walked into. Jerry hasn't sorted this out. Jerry sorted them out a nice holiday, but now we're in this situation because Kate and Madeleine and this. That, you know, it's almost as if he's ascribing the guilt and the annoyance of it to her.
The fact that we're on holiday.
He turns back to camera with a bit of a frown. The fact that we're on holiday.
Very safe resort, recognised for that. And of course, the world has changed in terms of information technology and the speed of response.
What? Like, the problem here is, if you give honest answers, then you appear honest, don't you? And if you give dishonest answers, you appear dishonest. And the honest answer here, regardless of what's happened to Madeleine, is why do you think there's been such a public response? And there's two critical points. One, Madeleine's a cute little girl. photogenic. 2, she's on the cover of all the newspapers. The News of the World have got hold of it. The Daily Mail. If you want a third point, I've got a publicist. That's how we're doing this interview. You know, they're my answers. Before, I didn't have a publicist. So what went on in my life didn't make the newspapers. And if my daughter was ugly and just some, you know, grunter, and we were in Manchester or Leeds or, you know, whatever, because people go missing, kids go missing, bad things happen, but it doesn't make the headlines, all the news, all this, all the time, like constant. It's a feature of the fact that Madeleine is quite photogenic. Maybe you might even say the truth here. If you were digging me, you might say people think we might have done it, and people want to know, did we do it, or did she get kidnapped, or like people don't know what's happened. It's a mystery. It tells the paper. Like, you'd look at these truthful answers, wouldn't you? You'd say, number one, she's really photogenic. Like, my daughter is so, like, you'd be reflecting on this. Like, she's so beautiful. No wonder people see her picture of her darling little hat and think, you know, oh, I wish we could find her. Now, that's your emotions that sort of come through. Second, the news, it's incredible that the newspapers have made such a big deal out of this. Of course, I want to find her. I'll tell everyone, have you seen my daughter? Have you found a flyer? Can I help? You know, but there's loads of missing kids out there. It is incredible the newspapers have picked up on this. And probably the reason that they've done that is because there's some interest in the story, because people might even think we did it, which we fucking didn't. How dare people think it? But, you know, that's where my honest reactions would come from. Maybe I'm just, you know, maybe I'm different. Maybe you feel the same. I don't know. But Jerry's answer is something very, very different.
I think there's a conglomeration of circumstances that have come together in this situation. The fact that
a conglomeration of circumstances that have come together is either doctor speak or company speak or something. It's boardroom speak. It's like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not complicated language, but like professional language, not commonplace day-to-day language.
Conglomeration of circumstances that have come together in this situation. The fact that we're on holiday.
The fact we're on holiday. That's got nothing to, like, really, is that the big thing of the story, Jerry? Is that why everyone's so desperate to help you find Madeleine and putting it on the newspapers? Because you were on holiday?
Very safe resort.
A very safe resort. That's probably why people are so desperate to help find her, because it's a very safe resort. No, that very safe resort is your bargaining language because you feel guilty that you're involved in some way. So you're trying to present the idea that it's, you know, no guilt here, not me. I took us to a very safe resort. So the fact that you're on holiday.
Conglomeration of circumstances that have come together in this situation.
Yep, the conglomeration of circumstances are, my daughter's kind of photogenic, so like when she's on the papers, people look at it and, oh, little darling, I hope we find her. Like, I'm not being funny, but if you're like, if you've got you know, if you're looking for your son and he's a bit of a grunter, then you're not going to sell as many papers. End of. Like, honestly, you'd say this, you'd think it. And the fact that the News of the World and all these papers are involved, it would be huge, wouldn't it?
The fact that we're on holiday.
The fact we're on holiday.
Very safe resort.
Very safe resort.
Recognised for that.
Recognised for that.
Of course, the world has changed. And
of course, the world has changed.
In terms of information technology.
In terms of information technology. What? The world has changed in terms of information technology? That sounds like something that somebody from corporate might say. In some meeting over the last 20 days, someone said that to Jerry. It's not something that he thinks, is it? He works as a doctor. He's on holiday playing tennis. He's not really thinking about how the world is changing in terms of information technology until he's faced with it and someone says, no, Jerry, look, I can email this to London right now and it'll be on the front page of the News of the World this afternoon. Look, Jerry, the state of the world has changed with information technology. Look what we can do now. Like, I think that's come up recently. Like, he's got those pictures behind him. Printouts. Campaigns. That's where you're seeing the world change with information technology, isn't it? In the response and the way you're doing things now afterward, the way you're able to, run your campaign and organise your fighting fund. Surely not. The reason... Why do you think, with lots of children going missing all the time, Madeleine has caught the public attention, has been becoming this big thing? Oh, well, the internet has changed. And this is 2007, we're on MySpace. Do you know what I mean? This is pre-YouTube, isn't it? YouTube started 2005. This is YouTube's in its second year, so it's not even, you're not watching YouTube. MySpace, golden era. 2003 MySpace started. 2005 it was at its zenith. So we're 2 years after MySpace. Like, we're in a bit of a nether region in the netherworld in the internet terms. It is changing, like you said, but that's not the reason that people are so desperately interested in the McCann story.
And the speed of response.
The speed of response. Now that's interesting that he mentions that with the way the world changed. The speed of response.
And technology. And the speed of response.
Who's responding? What response? He's not party to the police investigation. At some point they become our Guidos. You don't tell the people that, he's not... It's not like the police are out there doing something and then they email him as they get back in the office and he's keeping finger on the pulse. Speed of response. Who's responding to him? The lawyers? The media people? Oh, and also the money's coming into the fighting fund. That's a bit of a response, isn't it? The speed of that response. Within the first 20 days, nearly a millionaire. Like, I think it might be that.
In terms of the media coming here.
Oh, in terms of the media coming here.
And us being prepared.
And us being prepared. Again, I'm saying that they've got a media team. They do have, we know it for a fact at this juncture, that they have a media team and it's people from really like grotty places like the Daily Mail and the News of the World going out there to help them organise this fighting fund. They're all, fingers in pies at this point, aren't they? And a bit of a media team, a bit of a lawyers team. They know what's going on. This interview is part of that. So why do you think that the world was so interested in Madeleine? Because the media was so interested, they got here straight away. I don't know. That's like a symptom of the world being so interested in Madeleine, not the reason they're interested in Madeleine.
Response, in terms of the media coming here and us being prepared.
But us being prepared? What? Prepared?
To some extent, use that to try and influence the campaign, but...
And to try and influence the campaign again? What? That's really weird, isn't it?
And use that to try and influence the campaign, but above all else, it's touched everyone. Everyone. You don't have to be a parent for this to have a major...
And he gets himself off that topic. He shakes his head and... I think he's getting into some deep water here, and he shakes his head and thinks, "What the fuck am I doing?" and moves on to a slightly safer topic, because
and the speed of response.
The speed of response.
In terms of the media coming here.
The media come here.
Us being prepared.
And now us being prepared. Being prepared is something he stutters over slightly. He doesn't state. It's not his first. He's worried about saying the word. He needs to check the word.
Yeah. And us being prepared.
Prepared. He needs to check that that's not the wrong... He's not saying anything slightly too wrong here. Us being prepared. Us being sat down in a room and explained to. And us being part of a bigger thing. And us being, briefed and prepared. And what they prepared to do?
In terms of the media coming here. And us being prepared to some extent.
To some extent.
Use that to try and influence the campaign, but...
Influence the campaign again. And it was the police. I'll refer back to our channel, which you're watching now. And if you hit playlists, if you ever think it's good for you to subscribe here. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Because there'll be more of this interesting stuff that you like. There might be things you're not that into, like Genshin Impact. I don't play Genshin Impact. Why has he uploaded that? I thought this was a criminology channel. Well, it's a revolving variety content channel. There's stuff to buoy us along, like words on stream. We don't want to be criminology all the time. It'll do your head in. So we give some money to charity there, and I play this other game, Genshin Impact. It's all different stuff. So if you subscribe, you might see that in your inbox and go, oh, I've got to be on that. Stay subscribed, because I'll put it all on playlists for you, look. So the full playlist of Madeleine McCann here, the book they tried to ban, is where we started. The idea here that Jerry's saying,
above all else, it's touched every...
Before he gets on to above all else, which he wants you to think is more important than the things he's just said, which are not. The things he just said are important.
Yeah. And us being prepared. To some extent, use that to try and influence the campaign.
To try and influence the campaign. Now, I remember this police, the Portuguese policeman, saying that what he didn't specifically want Jerry to do was to try and influence the campaign or the investigation. He specifically said that it was an issue to the police that on day one, what's supposed to happen, right? When you're a policeman, what's supposed to happen is you get the call, something's happened. Something happened. What happened? That's why the police are there. And the police get there and they say, right, she's screaming about her daughter being missing. He's screaming there's been a paedophile took him. I don't know any of this. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to start off with I don't know. Right? And I'm going to start putting things together based on the evidence, because I'm a policeman. I'm going to take everyone's statement, but, you know, if I turn up to a crime... Let me say a different one. I turn up to a crime, there's been a robbery, apparently. And I enter the house and they say they took the telly. They come in, there was 6 of them, they took the telly. They took both tellies. They took all my diamonds and my gold. And I say, did they? Oh, I write all that down. That's facts now. That's in the book. That's facts. We're looking for 6 people. We need to find 2 tellies and diamonds and gold. Facts. I mean, that's ridiculous, isn't it? That's ridiculous. Not saying that you wouldn't believe victims, but 6 of them were there. And 2 tellies in the same room, did you? Diamonds and gold, have you? You know? Some things might not be... So, as a policeman, what I would do is I'd look for all the evidence, and I'd look for, you know, I might get some CCTV on the go, or this and that, or another testimony, and put things together. What you certainly don't do as a policeman is just believe what you're told by people just straight off the end. That's not what happens, is it? They check it against other people's statements, and then they see if they think this and that, and then they go again. And what the policeman wanted to do was to take the place like a crime scene, treat it like a crime scene, and to start off with the idea, because let's say, I don't know the exact percentages, I'm not looking at the exact percentages now, but let's say 70% of missing children are found within the first 48 hours because they wandered off. Let's say that, or I don't know the exact numbers, but you know, the first thing they wanted to do was to check all the local area, anywhere that a child might have wandered off to, check the kids club, check this, check that, check all the swimming pools, check the beaches, and organise a search, because they're looking for a missing child, essentially. That's the first thing they wanted to do. They didn't want to start off looking for, unless you'd seen someone carrying a child, which somebody came forward and said they had, fortunately, if you remember the story, one of their friends said that, but initially you'd be asking different questions, wouldn't you? Getting all the information you can and deciding where to go next. So what you certainly don't want is someone that's deep involved, right in the middle of it, to be influencing you, to be saying, why don't you look over here, why don't you do this? They can give you all the information, you take all their statements, and then you do your job. You certainly don't want them to say, like, Jerry's not to be leading the investigation, is he? Of course not. Of course not. So the book they tried to ban, it actually says it in there. We read through it and had a look at it. Goncalves Amaral was angry. He was unhappy about that. Hang on just one second. Meowing cat. Meowing cat. We're all right here. We're all right here. Oosh. Goncalves Amaral was angry at the McCanns for being that involved at that point in the investigation, in a way. He said it was I don't remember his exact words, it's in our videos there, but clouding the investigation by, initially they said it's an abduction, and he was like, is it? I don't know if it is. And they were like, it's an abduction. From day one, we need to have it in the news. It's an abduction. Everyone's saying it's an abduction. But we didn't have any evidence for abduction. There wasn't any, like, he would have come to a different conclusion as a policeman, and then they could have started saying things. No, we're in charge now. And Jerry McCann is here telling us that they wanted to influence the investigation. The question wasn't about that.
And us being prepared.
The question was about why do you think Madeleine has been on the front page of all the newspapers all around the world for the last 20 days?
Here, and us being prepared to some extent use that to try and influence the campaign, but above all else.
And he shakes his head as he moves on to the next thought to sort of dispel what he's saying, and also because it doesn't ring true. Something doesn't ring true, and I think it's what he's about to say doesn't ring true, rather than what he just said. But
the fact that we're on holiday, very safe resort, recognised for that, and of course the world has changed in terms of information technology and the speed of response, you know, in terms of the media coming here and us being prepared to some extent use that to try and influence the campaign. But above all else, it's touched everyone. Everyone. You don't have to be a parent for this to have a major impact on you. And I think it's also been very, very important. And some of the things which...
He's now getting a bit, not confused, but you can see he's not quite thinking on his feet as sharply as he would hope. Not stumbling over words, but using a slightly different word in a place where he didn't really think he was going to use it.
I think it's also been very, very important. And
the fact that he says very, very is noticeable because it's repetition of a word. So he's not thinking of the right word quick enough. So he's doubling up on the very there. So I think he's getting nervous. I think he's getting very nervous when he's saying this, and he's getting increasingly more nervous as he's saying it.
Well, you don't have to be a parent for this to have a major...
You know, he's almost rambling.
...impact on you. And I think it's also been very, very important. And some of the things which we have done and said, which...
And it's when he's starting to say, it's very, very important, and he's looking off into that place of things they've done, kinesthetic. So that rings true with the NLP. Things we've done and said. What things have you done and said that are causing you to feel this nervous and this raising this anxiety in you?
And some of the things which we have done and said, which we didn't realise what impact they would have. But
some of the things we did that we have done and said that we didn't realise how much impact it would have. What, on the investigation?
Some of the things which we have done and said, which we didn't realise what impact they would have. But
what have you done and said that's caused this problem that all the world's media now want to look at you?
So many thousands of people are doing small things to help us find Madeleine.
So many that what? What?
Many thousands of people are doing small things to help us find Madeleine.
So many thousands of people are doing small things to help us find Madeleine. What? Thousands? Do they all know where she is then? What the fuck are you on about? So many thousands of people doing small things. That's so many thousands of pounds in my bank because people have made little donations. I think. Or it could be so many thousands of phone calls that have confused the police over the last couple of days. I don't know.
We have done and said, which we didn't realise what impact they would have, but so many thousands of people are doing small things to help us find Madeleine. Because the worst feeling was helplessness.
Because the worst feeling was helplessness. What? Is it? I don't know. I don't know. I do know. I mean, I'm not... This would be awful to find out your daughter was missing. I did have a dog that, you know, gone on the run once, twice, a few times, and you get this anxiety, this like awful anxiety go through you while you're trying to find them. It's not helplessness though. because I was active. I was doing stuff. I was searching. I think the worst feeling was the anxiety that something terrible could go wrong, something really bad, that you might not find them. The pressure, the time ticking, it's getting dark, you know, that the worst feeling. Helplessness. I don't know, because I'm actively doing stuff. Maybe I'm wrong, you know, maybe the worst feeling is the helplessness. That feels like to be the media contrived answer at the end. It feels like he went off the reservation a bit, fucked up a bit, was starting to talk about things that he didn't want to say.
Very, very important, and some of the things which we have done, and
some of the things that we have done. He won't say that we did. He wants to change it to we have done.
Said, which we didn't realise what impact.
And we didn't realise what impact it would have. Again, we didn't even realise what impact it would have. It's very base language, rather than he didn't realise the impact it could have or did have. You know, there are different. He's getting down to very simple wording while he's getting. I think he's getting really nervous about this.
Some of the things which we have done and said, which we didn't realise what impact they would have, but so many thousands of people are doing small things to help us find Madeleine.
And so when you get so many people doing small things to help us find Madeleine, it almost feels like he's found his way back onto the media answer, where these are the things that you should say so that we get the money. This is how the advert works. You say, thank you to all the people doing their small things to help us find. You don't say giving us money, because if you're watching at home, you're like, what small thing can I do? I'd love to help Jerry with his feeling of helplessness and find this poor girl. What small thing can I do? Well, I'll buy the News of the World tomorrow with her on the front page again, and the campaign. And the News of the World are good because they're trying to help find this girl. So they're good. They're not these fuckers who are tapping phones and churning out bullshit in them. No, they're good because they're trying to help us find this girl. So I've got a good feeling about the News of the World now. That's happening subconsciously. And how can I help Jerry? I suppose I could give him some money, couldn't I? Because I can't give him anything. I can't buy him a packet of fags, or like, you know, I'm not going to Portugal to have a look. So I could give him some money, though, couldn't I? I could donate to that fund. Like, I could buy one of those wristbands and donate to that fund. So, like, anyone who feels compelled by Jerry's call to action, feeling like the people at home who are doing things are helping. This is an advert, isn't it? So that's why he refers to this.
Said, which we didn't realise what impact they would have, but so many thousands of people.
And he refers to thousands because that's the exact figures. It's coming in the thousands now. It's not quite hit the millions yet, but it's coming in the hundreds of thousands.
Are doing small things to help us find Madeleine, because the worst feeling was helplessness.
So if you tell them the worst feeling is helplessness with a completely dispassionate look on your face, almost a sneer, you know, I don't think that's a face of helplessness. Helplessness is beaten down, and like when you're helpless for enough, you become subservient, you become submissive, your head falls, you don't meet people's gaze, because helplessness is a lack of agency. So you tend to try less to be in control, if that makes sense. You know, you don't confront and stand up to and face down. You fall more naturally into a slouch. So I don't see that in Jerry, that helplessness, unless it's turned itself into some sort of rage. What I see instead is the slight sneer of somebody who's, when he's delivering these lines, these calls to action to the common people who read the News of the World and the Daily Mail, when he's delivering these lines, he sneers because he sees them as scum who are easy to manipulate, and they're idiots, and they give him money, and they read the News of the World, and they fucking watch Coronation Street, and you know, I think Jerry puts himself above the average person on the street, the normal people, and when he refers to them in this way, subconsciously I see the micro expression of contempt.
The absolute worst, that we had no bearing on finding her, but once you start to do that, then you start to feel a bit better.
The absolute worst, that we had no bearing on finding her. It's fucked up. I can't believe we're nearly at 1.5 hours, and I've only done 4 minutes of this again. We will get through this whole interview, I promise you, you know, as part of the content that we produce.
The absolute worst.
But I want to give it time and really dig into these things. This is how it has to be done.
They would have, but so many thousands of people are doing small things to help us find Madeleine, because the worst feeling
was
helplessness.
He sort of refers to Kate when he says it. He sort of turns his face to Kate there briefly.
The worst feeling
turns his face there to Kate briefly.
Was helplessness.
The worst feeling. Again, I believe that's that. He wants to show that it's her that's caused these feelings and is guilty of this. The worst feeling.
The absolute worst that we had
was helplessness. But then the absolute worst.
Because the worst feeling was helplessness.
And that's where you stop, isn't it?
The absolute worst that we had no bearing on finding her.
The absolute worst that we had no bearing on finding her. What? No. The absolute worst feeling is that she's in the arms of a pedo. And I can't state the thing. I mean, I've already said the P word twice now in this episode, so probably YouTube will shut us down, won't it? But, I'm not even going to state the worst things that could be happening if she were in the arms of said fucking Jimmy Savile or whatever. Obviously, the worst things are fucking horrific, aren't they? Not helplessness that you can't find her. And why can't you find her? Because you know where she is. You can't tell people where she is. That's the worst thing. Is on the other side of the coin, if she's dead and you've hidden her, the worst thing is knowing where she is and not being able to tell people the truth. That's the worst thing. Not that you won't find. If you're looking for her and you've got these things on the wall and you're trying to look for her, you can find her. That's why you're trying. That's the hope you said that you have to live in earlier in the interview. Always have to live in hope. What?
The absolute worst that we had no bearing on finding her.
We had no bearing on finding her sounds more like we had no reason to kill her. We had no desire to kill her. We're not guilty. We had no bearing on finding her. What does bearing mean? It's a strange word. Does that mean like we can't bearing down on something, force something? We can't force finding her because she can't be found because we've hidden her? Or is it we've got no bearing as in I've lost my bearings, I don't know which way to look? We have no start point on finding her. I don't know where, how and what to do. That would be more congruent with the fact that he got those books about police investigation. Maybe he's trying to learn how to find her. For me, it would become a bit more primal and a bit more simple. I would be knocking on every fucker's door. And I know they wouldn't understand me, and I know it'd be silly, but unless I'd visited every house in that area and knocked on every door, it could be that someone just took her on a train that day and was gone, yeah, okay, but in that area, unless I'd knocked on every door and looked every fucker in the eyes and asked, I couldn't, if it was my daughter, I just don't think I could leave. I'd probably have to live there for the rest of my life as home base, suspect of all the neighbours, in some weird paranoid state. But you know what I mean? I wouldn't feel that I had no bearing on finding her. I'd feel that in some ways, like the films with Clint Eastwood and that, in some ways I'm the only fucker who can find her and it's my mission to find her. I would never give up on that.
Doing small things to help us find Madeleine, because the worst feeling was helplessness. The absolute worst, that we had no bearing on finding her. But once you start to do that, then you start to feel a bit better. And I hope...
Once you start to do that, then you start to feel a bit better. Do what? Listen, let's give it a big listen.
Why do you think it has provoked such enormous public support, of which I don't think we've ever seen before?
Financial support.
I think there's a conglomeration of circumstances that have come together in this situation. The fact that we're on holiday, very safe resort, recognised for that.
We hear heavy breathing. It could be Kate, it could be Jerry. It's probably not the interviewer, who's probably used to not heavy breathing in his mic. So I'm guessing it's one of these two. I think it's another sign of this nervousness, this heavy breathing.
And of course, the world has changed in terms of information technology and the speed of response, in terms of the media coming here and us being prepared to some extent use that to try and influence the campaign. But above
I see
all,
prepared in a different way now as well. Before I saw it as being readied, being prepared, being briefed before we go in with the media team, but also us being prepared, as in, are you prepared to do this? Are you willing to do this? I'm not prepared to use the media to make us money, Jerry. I think that's an evil thing to do. No, Kate, you have to be prepared to twist the rules a little because we'll get rich. Are you prepared to do it? An ethical question. An ethical question.
In terms of the media coming here and us being prepared to some extent use that to try and influence the campaign, but above all else it's touched everyone. You don't have to be a parent for this to have a major impact on you, and I think it's also been very, very important, and some of the things which we have done and said which we didn't realise what impact they would have, but so many thousands of people are doing small things to help us find Madeleine, because the worst feeling was helplessness, the absolute worst, that we had no bearing on finding her. But once you start to do that, then you start to feel a bit better, and I hope we're going to look back at
when you start to do that, you start to feel a bit. He didn't say what it was you do. He said the worst feeling was helplessness. We had to be prepared to influence the campaign, and once you start to do that, you begin to feel a bit better. The only thing I could liken that, I mean, I don't know exactly what he means, but the only thing I could is say that once you're prepared to influence the campaign, then you can start to feel a bit better. Does he mean once you're prepared to sort of, like, you've got to, if she's not missing, if you know what's happened to her, you've got two choices. You either keep it under wraps and you're prepared to go through with this thing for the rest of your life, or you tell the truth and you're prepared to do that. Like, I think it feels to me like they've made this sort of like dark pact, and once you're prepared to do it and you go through with it, then it starts to become easier, because you've made your decision, and you're, at least, even if the problems are coming up, because now I've got to do this interview and now I've got to say this thing, and you've made your decision though, and you know what the right choices are. Do you know what I mean? Because they've been made for you, because you've made this decision. I've got a cat meowing at me now. If I open this door, he's going to run off. So he obviously wants feeding, but he'll have to just wait a little minute. So once you've decided to go down this road, things become, it's a bit like a treatment or lack of treatment for a like, you know, if someone's decided they're going to stop taking the cancer treatment and move to palliative care, it's very hard to move on, but at least you've got the framework around you of, like, you know what things are happening, so you can the word is accept it, isn't it? Because, you know, find some acceptance. So it's a very strange strange choice of words from Jerry, because I thought we were looking for his missing daughter 20 days on.
Find Madeleine, because the worst feeling was helplessness, the absolute worst, that we had no bearing on finding her. But once you start to do that, then you start to feel a bit better, and I hope we're going to look back at the end of all this and say that we have done everything in our power, but also that other people are helping in so many other ways, and they feel that they are part of it.
I hope that we'll look back on it and say that we did everything in our power. I hope that. Well, I wouldn't hope that. I'd know that. I'd say I know that when I look back on this, I'm not going to be able to say I haven't slept for the last fucking 20 days, mate. I've slept about 2, and every fucking, I don't think there's a square foot of this peninsula that I haven't covered. Like, there's not a fucking grain of sand on that beach that hasn't been walked on by me. I've asked every fucker. I'm not going to go home thinking there's 1% more I could have done. I'm confident in that. But also, everyone else around the world is giving us money. Like, it's almost like an advert, this bit.
Once you start to do that, then you start to feel a bit better. And I hope we're going to look back at the end of all this and say that we have done everything in our power.
We're going to look back at the end of all this. What do you mean the end of all this? The end in sight now, is it? You're still looking for your daughter. What you would hope is that we're going to look back at the end of all this with Madeleine in our arms and say, oh my God, like, what a fucking journey we went on. Thank you to everyone who helped us get her home safe. That's what I would hope for, yeah? That's what I'd hope for. We'd look back on this and say, I can't believe that happened. As extraordinary as it was, she was just safe and sound, eating fucking ice cream in the ice cream hut that no one... She'd found a key to the ice cream hut and she'd been in there for 20 days binging on ice cream. Like, you know, what an extraordinary turn of events. I'd hope for the best anyway, wouldn't I? Like, and we'd look back with Madeleine in our arms as she grows up saying, we're never going back on holiday there again, fuck that. Do you know what I mean? That's what you'd look back with.
But once you start to do that, then you start to feel a bit better. And I hope we're going to look back at the end of all this and say that we have done everything in our power.
I hope we're going to look back and say we've done everything in our power.
But also that other people help.
But also that you do something as well. Call to action. Click like and subscribe. But also that you do something.
Helping in so many other ways, and they feel that they are part of it.
And that you feel you're part of it. I don't give a fuck about you feeling you're part of it if my daughter's lost. No offence. On this stream, I obviously do give a fuck about you. I reach out hands around the world. But Jerry can honestly say in his interview, while he's looking for his daughter 20 days after her disappearance, that he hopes that everyone around the world can feel they've been a part of it. When all's said and done and the dust has settled, I hope you can feel you've done your bit. What?
Does it worry you that people might start to...
He sticks his tongue out.
All this and say that we have done everything in our power, but also that other people are helping in so many other ways, and they feel that they are part of it.
He purses his lips at the end while he holds his expression. Don't show them what you're thinking.
Does it worry you...
But there, micro expression sticking out the tongue. It means defiance. It's like a child. I've got one over on you. Sticking out the tongue. Micro expression. Body language. And you'll notice my spelling is fucking awful there, but I need to take a quick bathroom break, so I thought I'd give you something to look at. The classic tongue gesture intended to mock another person. Mocking you. He's talking to you, all the people around the world, hoping you will have done your bit to help find Madeleine. It's like a war effort. What can you do? You can give us money. Idiot, dummy, give me some money. That's what it is, in my opinion. There it is on screen if you want to have a little read through it while I just quickly take a bathroom break. Can you hear me, Daddy? Right there. Oosh. So I think we're bang on something here. I was just thinking in the bathroom then as well. I was thinking that you might say that the tongue out, okay? You might say that the tongue out is more of a, what's the word? I was thinking in the bathroom because I get dry skin on my lips and I was chewing my lips like that. And I was thinking of this and I thought, he might just be licking his lips. He might just have a dry mouth licking your lips, you know, you've just done an answer. Wait until you think the camera's not on you because the other guy's talking now and, you know, just reset your mouth a little bit or something. You're on the telly, you're doing an interview, it's a bit different. But he's got that sneer that I said before. He's thinking about these people at home who are sending in the money. He's talking to them through the camera. That's the purpose of the interview. He's got that sneer and that pushing out the tongue that we just saw was a condescending mocking another person. Something that's spoiled or tastes horrible. He's not doing that. He hasn't got a bad taste in his mouth. Not literally, physically. Beckoning or pleading, obscene gestures, tongue curl. It could be pleading for your money. Tongue in cheek, we're not doing that. Clicking tongue, we're not doing that. Licking lips. When the tongue is used to lick the lips, it's a sign of desire for something. It usually has to do with food, but it can be social connotation of desire. It could be desire for that money, couldn't it? Concentration. This is what I was going to say. Concentration and biting the tongue. Biting the tongue's negative because you're stopping language. Like, I would, in this situation, be more happy seeing Jerry do a bite of his lips. Like I was just doing in the bathroom because I had some dry skin on my lips. So I might do it now, and it's not body language, I've just got some dry skin on my lips, but I'd much rather see him finishing his statements with a more worried, you know, he's anxious, he's looking for his daughter, he's hoping to find her. A bite of the lips would show that he's holding back maybe this big, you know, from breaking down, from being too... Look, for God's sake, why are we fucking talking about this in this room? I need to be out there looking for her. And do you know anything? If anyone out there knows anything, she's like, her favourite thing's this cat, and you know, going on about like, you know, biting things back, holding things back, biting back tears. But instead, I'm seeing this sign of contempt and sticking out of the tongue. It's a different form of, even if you just wanted to lick your lips and lubricate your speaking organ, even if that's what you were trying to do, you could do it in a more reticent, a more inhibited way that would show more self-reflection, anxiety, rather than condescension, aggression. So it's a very bad look, that is.
You that people might start to lose interest as time goes on, the media coverage diminishes inevitably?
For me, we know that the media coverage is not going to last a long time. It's lasted much longer, and we have been much more successful in driving our message out than we could.
Successful in driving our message out. At this point, the camera pans away and we start to see Kate looking like dead.
Ever possibly have imagined.
Successful? How do you determine success in today's society? Number of papers sold, probably. No, money, isn't it? It's about you've become very rich.
Personally, I think.
And you didn't... I'm not doing strict body language here, I'm doing more textual analysis now, but you just said that you didn't think it was going to last that long, and it's lasted longer than you thought it would, so you realise you've got to capitalise on this opportunity while you can. It's not so much about finding Madeleine, is it? It's about filling the bank.
It's gone beyond that at the minute, and that there is a feeling with many people out there that they will not allow this to happen.
What? They will not allow this to happen? What does he mean, happen? What to happen?
And we know that, and we pray that it doesn't happen again, but when it does, the speed of the next response and the template we have set will alter it.
So now what he's saying is that... this is fucking weird as well. He's saying that we can't allow this to happen, meaning someone taking a child, and that the next time someone does this, we've set up a new police framework for how to deal with child abduction. All of that is shit. All of that is bullshit. The police have not changed their modus operandi of child abductions or missing children cases. Like, that hasn't happened. That's not what's happened. And the next time this happens, which it certainly will happen, what? What do you mean? What will certainly happen again? It's a very strange thing to say.
It's lasted much longer, and we have been much more successful in driving our message out than we could ever possibly have imagined. Personally, I think it's gone beyond that at the minute.
It's gone beyond that.
And that there is a feeling with many people out.
And this is where she was nodding along before, Kate was, but now she starts to go a bit more stilled and heavy breathing because she's a bit more worried now. What the fuck is he saying? Why does he keep going off the script?
There, that they will not allow this to happen, and we know that, and we pray that it doesn't happen again, but when it does, the speed of the next response and the template we have set will alter it. And there has been so...
And he can't quite... Well, he chokes that last word.
And there has been so much goodwill and humanity out there that it really has restored that one evil act, goodwill.
Maybe this is script, because he corrects what he was saying there, so he gets back on script.
And the template we have set will alternate.
Will alternate? What?
The speed of the next response and the template we have set will alternate. And there has been so much goodwill.
That doesn't even make sense. The speed of the response and the template we've set will alternate.
And humanity out there, that it really has restored that one evil act.
One evil act. It really has restored my... He was going to say, there's been so much goodwill, it's really restored my faith in humanity. But he corrects himself because he said this before, but he edits it. So because people say, restored my faith in humanity. That's a cliche. He's better than that. But one evil act restored my faith in humanity. Oh, what a clever thing. What a clever thing. Something bad turned into something so good. Clever, the way you've turned that round. Probably the way you'd have to think about it if you were trying to reason it out in your own minds, that you're not an evil person for killing your daughter, that one evil act does not make you into an evil person. Evil act, one bad thing that happened, actually turned out to be such a good thing. The fact that Madeleine's dead actually means that we're millionaires. So, I don't like this at all. You know, I don't like anything he's saying here.
Actually has resulted in so much good.
Where do you go from here? There's talk of travelling around Europe. Have you got any firm plans?
The Pope, we're going to visit the Pope.
We haven't got any firm plans.
We haven't got any firm plans. And there's again a little smile here again. Because now we're into the world of how you're going to spend the money.
Any firm plans as yet?
We haven't got any firm plans. We're likely to travel in a few places in Europe. But as you...
And he's reflective on this as well when she says it. Like, they're spending the money now.
Yes, no definite plans.
But you've got no plans to go back to the UK for the foreseeable future?
No.
I'm laughing because this is awful from both of them. She's a whispered no. She's a whispered no.
UK for the foreseeable future?
No. Again, I find it very difficult when she whispers words because I don't think she has the conviction of what she's saying. She whispers them. She almost chokes the word. No. Very soft, very lack of conviction. Maybe she does have plans to go to the UK. Maybe she wanted to, but Jerry wouldn't have it. I don't know, but it lacks conviction. Whereas Jerry's putting this face. What's that about, Jerry? Pursing his lips back onto his teeth, but almost in a self-satisfied kind of way. You know, almost as if to say, I don't have any plans to go back to the UK. Would you? I'm a millionaire. I'm off to meet the Pope, you fucking chump. You know, if you... let's say someone's fucking something up at work and you just, like, you walk in and you see the scene and you think, oh, these idiots. Like, you might purse your lips and pull back a little bit there, mightn't you? You're not going to start yabbing on about it, but it's a very difficult body language expression for somebody who, being asked about their plans to go back to the UK when their daughter's missing, like, you would see some sort of conflict of emotion. You would see, I want to stay here and look for Madeleine, but instead, part of me does want to go home and have that comfort of, I want to, you know, go home and have the care and comfort of home. Jerry's they just asked me about what you're going to do with the money, how you're going to travel around Europe, and have you got any plans to go home? Jerry's in Monte Carlo, mate.
I think that everybody has just been incredibly impressed with you as a couple and how you've dealt with this. There was a period...
That's media contrived. I think everyone is impressed with you because the media tell you how to feel and think by telling you what everyone else is thinking, feeling. So if you're watching this interview, you are to feel impressed by this couple. Everyone else does. It's bullshit. And it's pandering to them.
Everybody has just been incredibly impressed with you as a couple and how you've dealt with this. There was a period after a week or so where you looked as if you were almost broken, and who could not understand that. And then there seemed to be a sort of a strength come from somewhere.
The money.
Is that a fair point? Is that what happened and what brought that about?
They're both very stone-faced while he's talking. Don't want to reveal anything. Poker-faced.
I think that's definitely true, isn't it?
This time he actually looks to her when she starts talking and she refers to him. It's much more, you know, I was saying about the natural body language a couple would give off when asked questions as a couple would be to refer to each other. That's much more natural. And finally, we can be in a much more natural place where we can talk and behave naturally. So we've come from the topic of Madeleine's disappearance, where we are worried and we've got answers that we deliver. And is she talking? I'll look out the side of my eyes to make sure she's got her lines. It's my lines now. And we've moved into a place where we're talking about how you're going to spend the money and how good you are. So now we can relax and just talk about things more naturally, and immediately we get a much more natural bit of body language.
Fair point. Is that what happened and what brought that about?
It's almost like they don't know who's going to do the speaking.
I think that's definitely.
So he looks to her with his tongue out again. He's doing that half tongue out. She's looking to him. We've just been told we're good people and the whole world thinks we're brilliant and lovely. Like, they bought it. It's like a look to each other to confirm that that's gone well. We've got through that. We've got away with that. He's got his tongue out. She's checking him. She's more... sometimes body language is a two-way street, and you read the other person while you're naturally... and you see that as a body language. So she's reading him and his response to this. How has it gone, Jerry? And Jerry's showing her with his little confidence, little tongue out confidence. It's gone well. You can talk if you want.
Definitely true, isn't it?
Certainly.
But I'm going to take over now. She's huffed. She's giving him a signal, which is that she was going to carry that. See, I think what's happening here is there's a check. They're both checking each other. You were almost broken, and now things are better. How have you, how everyone thinks you're brilliant. How are things going? And the correct answer that Jerry wants to hear from Kate is, yes, things were difficult, but now I'm moving forward. I'm on board with the plan. But when she gives that big sigh, it's as if to say, oh, hang on, there's this doubt, there's this guilt still there in me. And Jerry don't want to, no, shut that down. I'll take over. We're good people.
Not understand that. And then there seemed to be a sort of strength come from somewhere. Is that a fair point? Is that
where does the strength come from?
What brought that about?
And the strength initially, from my perspective, is that Jerry was saying, I've got a plan, and it's God's plan. God wanted it this way. So the strength should come from God or Jerry. And he does. Jerry takes over when Kate belies this lack of strength when she does the big sigh.
I think that's definitely true, isn't it?
There's even a tongue. We've got the thing, so I'll open it. Tongue in cheek. When a person thrusts their tongue into the cheek, it bulges out. What they've just said or done is a spoof. The same gesture can indicate puzzlement. I would have said it's a bit more like confidence sometimes, though, here. Fabricating a story is tongue in cheek. But I would say that I'm looking at a confident, not able to stick the tongue out, like that, like big rude, but in the front of the mouth here. It can also be probing the mouth, searching for something. If someone's asking you a question and you're like digging around in your mouth with your tongue, digging around, probing for something. But it comes after he's confirmed, he's looked at Kate, she is giving the correct strength response, like she's saying that she's strong, and she's like, yeah, job done. I'm a good chuffer. Like, kiss my teeth, like sticking a bit of the tongue, like job done, like confidence.
Broken, and who could not understand that? And then there seemed to be a sort of strength come from somewhere. Is that a fair point? Is that what happened and what brought that about?
I think that's definitely true, isn't it?
I think that's definitely true, yeah. And he's also, you can see his jaws slightly open here, so he's almost like half chewing his tongue, like I don't know, it reminds me of someone chewing a big cigar or something, like, yeah. And then the sigh, and he's ready to, no, don't start wobbling here. He's in.
Certainly, at the end of that first week, there was so much emotion that we had spent, and we actually had...
Emotion that we'd spent. It's interesting that we're using the word spent, isn't it? Do you remember we're talking about the financials? Do you remember we're talking about becoming millionaires? Do you remember we're talking about what you're about to do, travelling around Europe? Do you remember in the initial stages, after the first week, you would be in if you'd been on holiday and you had to stay out there an extra week that you hadn't planned for, then that would be for me, that would be a problem, because where am I going to find the money for that? I didn't plan for an extra week holiday. I'm supposed to be at work. Like, that's fucked things up financially for me. staying out in, and not just a week on holiday, but a week where I've got to go and looking around the entire island and printing flyers. And do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, financially I can understand there would be issues, but you're referring to your experience 20 days later. That first week we spent a lot emotionally, of course. I'm talking about emotional spend, but the financial terms are coming up.
A period where we discussed this openly, that we felt completely devoid of emotion. And the analogy that I like to use is a bit like when we were students and you got to your overdraft limit and you'd gone beyond it and there was just nothing left in the tank.
Again, it's financial. When we were students, and they've been through this together then as students, have they? They've been like big team, aren't they? Do you remember when we were students, and I don't know what happened when they were students. I don't know if they committed any crimes when they were students. You know, I'm not suggesting that they committed crimes when they were students, but it's like when we were students and we had no money and we had to do X, Y, Z. Like, this is even more worrying from Jerry. Hello, Susan Campbell. They show more concern for their own feelings and their daughters. Yeah, it's incredible to me that at this juncture, we're still talking about Madeleine being, this is 20 days later, we're still talking about her being potentially, hopefully, alive and well somewhere, maybe even watching this on the telly. And I'm more interested in, 20 years ago when I was a student, we had this same sort of like problems and we pulled through as a family, and like a week ago we thought there was nothing left in the tank, but now I'm a millionaire and I'm about to go around Europe. I'm feeling a lot better. It's just a very strange combination of words from Jerry. And when he does it, I was going to call her Madeleine then. Kate she slips into this shell, this shutdown shell. One eye goes even more closed than the other. And it's like someone who's being berated or told off. Many people have told me in chat that she used to run the boots in the relationship and have the big bollocks. But I think that's a perception that people had from the outside. But I think that you can allow your spouse to appear to do that to the outside if you are fully in control behind closed. I think Jerry has a lot of control, and I think that in this situation, with her being so broken over the death of Madeleine, Jerry assumed control. And I think when this is happening, he's reflecting on when they were students and they had nothing left in the like, that would have been difficult. I remember being a student eating gravy and peas, like, it is difficult, but I don't know what they did to get through that. I don't know what they, pact they've made together over the years to, they've been through the wars, obviously, since they were students, he's saying, and there's nothing left in the tank. Now, he's referring to some other time in their life where something equally bad has happened or difficult, or they're completely emotionally spent in the overdraft and all this. He's mixing it all up with financials. It's very strange. And when he's doing it, Kate goes into this shutdown mode. So I think at times she can be in charge. Take your feet off the sofa, Jerry. I want this restaurant. I'm not going in that restaurant. People can see her being demonstrative and in charge, whatever. But when it comes to, we've got no money left, Kate, I'm going to have to do X, Y, Z. Maybe, I'm just going to make some shit up here. So this is not something I think they've done. But let's say we're both medical students, we've got no money left, and you don't want to steal the drugs from the medical office, but I'm stealing these fucking drugs and selling them to the junkies down the street, Kate, and you're going to help. You're going to steal them as well because you've got no money left. I'm calling the shots now, and she'll switch shit shuts down. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. I've got no way out. I'm financially destitute, so I have to steal the drugs. Jerry's my partner, and I'm going along with it. It's like same with, I've discovered Madeleine's having problems. I've tried to resuscitate her. She's dead. Jerry's discovered the situation. Shutdown mode for Kate. So I think this is all very difficult. I don't know what they did when they were students, but they've been through shit together as students. He's analogizing it to when they were students and they had no money left in their overdraft. So he's talking about their emotional spend here, but he's referring to a time when they were students and they were financially destitute. And again, he took over. He's taken over in this part of the conversation. She is shut down.
Devoid of emotion. And the analogy that I like to use is
devoid of emotion as well. Remember, we're talking about doctors who can be devoid of it. You have to be devoid of emotion if you're telling people the bad news in your doctor's office, and then you've got to go home and bath the kids. You have to be devoid of emotion sometimes as a surgeon, don't you? Certainly as a surgeon, you have to be, hello Squirrel Sniper, you have to be devoid of emotion as a surgeon. So he's referring to that again. And we're only 20 days away from when their daughter went missing. Now we're talking about him referring to where all these ideas come from, Jerry. Why now, when you're supposed to be looking for your daughter, should you be completely devoid of emotion? Because a week after she was missing, you felt absolutely exhausted and spent, both financially and physically, I would imagine.
We felt devoid, completely devoid of emotion. And the analogy that I like to use is a bit like when we were students and you got to your overdraft limit and you'd gone beyond it and there was just nothing left in the tank.
I remember doing my overdraft limit as a student. I was a right fucker though, wasn't I? I was buying drum and bass records and naughty things and going out raving and being a student and having to eat. So I did get to my overdraft limit, yeah. I remember once before I even got to uni, I got a credit card and I like basically went shopping on it, didn't I? Like an idiot. Maxed it out, was like, oh, I'll pay that off with my next, thing. Got the sack from my job and was like, I've got this credit card bill. Like, I've been in these situations, yeah, but that was irresponsible, like 17-year-old Scotty. Like, I don't remember going beyond my overdraft. And certainly as I got a bit older, like, they're medical students, bear in mind, they're supposed to be quite smart people. Like, at what point have you spent all of your money and gone beyond? Aren't they from nice families who have got a bit of something about them? Have they gone beyond their overdraft? How have you done that? What have you got into that's taken you beyond your overdraft? Because for me, and I'll be straight, right, I can't say too much about it on the internet because of terms of service, but, drinking and drugs and partying and that sort of lifestyle, you spend all your money, don't you? I didn't have a gambling addiction. I didn't have a drug addiction. I just, all that sort of party lifestyle. Do you know what I mean? But what this guy's saying is that when he was a student with his significant other, they both ran all of their money completely fucking dead to the ground, gone. They both ran all their money down, gone, beyond their overdrafts. Not just I paid my student fees and now I'm a bit skint and I'm eating fucking pasta and gravy again. No, I've gone beyond my overdraft limit. And there's nothing left in the tank. He's analogizing it to the way they emotionally feel. So they must have emotionally felt pretty fucking bad back then as well. I remember going through I had a breakdown at uni. I wanted to come home. I was crying, upset. I broke up with my girlfriend and, saw no future for myself. Oh, I came home, grew a beard, and all that. Oh yeah, absolutely. Mental health, the lot. Like, I'm happy with the way things have worked out. I've built on my difficulties and seen them as positives and all that. Am I to assume that you've been through the same, Jerry? Because what you're telling me is that when you were at uni, you spent all of your money and there was nothing left in the tank. But now you're a big surgeon and you've got shit going on. And again, Kate shut down. In that situation, you're down to zeros. You spent nothing in the tank. What have you got to do to survive? How have you got in this situation? I look at them and think he's analogizing back to that time. So is that what Kate behaved like back then as well? These partners in crime beyond what we're to assume with Madeleine, or to not assume. It's very strange that he's talking in these terms.
I think physically and mentally were shattered. But, as you gradually get more on an even keel, we started to get back into the black.
What? So Madeleine's disappearance is a financial sort of thing. He's conflated the two things. His analogy here is your emotional energy, which you don't need an analogy for. If you're telling people at home, you know what, I felt absolutely fucking drained. I don't need to, drained as in, if you imagine you've got a barrel and it's full of your emotions and at the end of it, there was no water in it. No, I don't do that. I just say, I was fucking drained. I was knackered. I was on my knees. I was crying every day and searching every night. And, I was absolutely spent, you could say, maybe. But to then carry it on, we started to get back into the black. He means literally financially. He means he saw the money rolling in from this News of the World campaign and these offers and these interviews. They're getting paid for this one. Like, they're back into the black. And he's also told me that as a student he had financial problems. I don't know if on the way out to holiday they had financial problems. I don't know if they've been running on the credit cards for the last 20 years and then all of a sudden this has happened and it's changed their life. I don't know what their financials have been like. But he's talking about getting back into the black. Madeleine's gift from heaven, her pennies from heaven campaign, that Madeleine's fund, is that they became millionaires. And he's already, at this juncture, more preoccupied with that than finding his daughter. Because this is at the end of the interview where he's talking about his missing daughter and he's using financial analogies.
And we'd also worked tirelessly behind the scenes to put support mechanisms in place including our legal team, the response with the fund, which was
support mechanism, working tirelessly. Because of course, if I was tirelessly, you imagine we are out on holiday, yeah, and our child, I don't care if you're a boy or a girl or anyone listening, you know, imagine just we are a couple and we're out on holiday. Like, it might be funny to you to assume that I'm your significant other, so imagine that I'm just like there as a friend if you want. Whatever, we're out and we've lost a child, right? You and I have lost a child. Could you imagine if 20 days later I was saying, like, you know, we're going to have to get this behind the scenes, I've been working tirelessly to put support mechanisms in place. You'd be like, oh, thank God, I need support right now. I'm searching for this child. And I say to you, yeah, I've been in touch with a team that responds to the fund, and I've got lawyers to sort out the legal aspects. And you'd be like, what? What legal aspects? What are you on about? Oh, the legal aspects of this fighting fund that I'm putting in the bank. And you'd be like, money? Money? You're thinking about money at a time like this? Fucking Madeleine's missing. We need to find Madeleine. Like what? Working tirelessly, hello Snips, working tirelessly with the accounts, yeah. I mean, how on earth would you, not only would you do this, but admit to it on telly 20 days later, instead of saying, look, I have been shattered. I'm so grateful for the public response, because we need to find Madeleine, and every penny and every minute goes into finding him. I haven't even got time to talk to lawyers. I've had to get my fucking brother in, or my sister in, or, you know, someone else in to deal with that shit, because I still walk the beaches with these fucking flyers. I wouldn't, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not like, you know, maybe you're like me though, maybe we are like, I don't know. I wouldn't want to sit in the office and talk to the fucking accountants. I wouldn't want to do it. I'd want to be out on the street. Oh, it's not helpful for you to be out on the street. Oh, you need to get some sleep. Oh, you know, you're not going to find her walking around on the beach. I might do. You can't fucking tell me. When my dog was lost, I was in the woods till 8 o'clock at night till I found him. It got dark. I wasn't going home. You know, I just... that was a dog. Like, yeah, so I don't really like what he's saying here. I don't like the tone. I don't like the actual factual content of the words, the body language of Kate being shut down and him delivering it. I'm not delving too deeply into the body language at the end here, because what he's saying is so fucking worrying. And if you're the police and you saw that, what the fuck would you think? Well, you'd think we have to get better lawyers. We've only got cheap police lawyers. They've got expensive campaign fund lawyers now.
I think that's definitely true.
This was before they became our Guidos. Before the police announced them as suspects.
Certainly, you know, at the end of that first week, there was so much emotion that we had spent, and we actually had a period where we discussed this openly, that we felt completely devoid of emotion. And the analogy that I like to use is a bit like when we were students and you got to your overdraft limit and you'd gone beyond it and there was just nothing left in the tank. I think physically and mentally were shattered. But, you know, as you gradually get more on an even keel, we started to get back into the black. And we'd also worked...
I've got to pick out two things here. He said even keel, which is a boating term, isn't it? It's a nautical term. And there is some conjecture, I'll just say this, some conjecture, which we haven't looked into deeply yet because it wasn't in the police book, but there is some conjecture that they were given the keys to a church nearby, and they visited this church nearby quite a lot, and there is some conjecture that they hid Madeleine's body at that church and then disposed of her in the sea. And Jerry was on a boat trip at some... I've got to get the facts up for me to... You know, at the moment this is my conjecture, I suppose, but a boat trip, the sea, you know, let's just say that. He's used the word as we got back onto an even keel, which is a nautical term, which might imply subconsciously that he's saying once this act, this nautical act has been carried out, we can put a line under it and move on. Very difficult language there. I didn't like that at all. And there's also something else.
I think that's definitely true, isn't it?
There was so much emotion that we had spent in first week. Certainly, you know, at the end of that first week, there was so much emotion that we had spent, and we actually had a period where we discussed this openly, that
where we discussed this openly. We actually had a period where we discussed this openly. That who's he saying we discussed this openly to? Anything that he's saying they discussed. If you were to say to me, I'm telling you, me and Kate discussed this openly. What? What do you mean openly? You discuss it with each other. There's no open. Either you're discussing it or you're not. Openly, yeah, everyone else could hear. We discussed this when the police were in the room, or we discussed this when the lawyer was in the room, or we discussed this openly with our family. Suggesting there are some things you didn't discuss openly. If you're having to categorise some things that you discussed openly, not just discussed, me and Kate discussed this, but openly, then surely there's something you haven't discussed openly or have agreed not to say. So that's troubling as well, isn't it? Jerry is like, this isn't even body language. I haven't I'm not even mentioning the body language of this, which we've done a bit of body language analysis in this video, but this is terrible textual statement. It's embedded confessions 101, isn't it?
Certainly, at the end of that first week, there was so much emotion that we had spent, and we actually had a period where we discussed this openly, that we felt completely devoid of emotion. And the analogy that I like to use is a bit like when we were students and you got to your overdraft limit and you'd gone beyond it and there was just nothing left in the tank.
I want to pick up on that as well, because I just wanted to say as well, I remember being a student and fucking up in my life, and not just being when I was a student, but fucking up in my life, and having to say to somebody, I've spent all the money. I've got nothing. Can I come home and can I live at this house? Can I maybe share a bunker room with you? Like that was difficult, you know what I mean? Like having to fess up and having nothing left is like an anxiety moment, an anxiety moment, but they're reflecting on it as if like having nothing left means like, right, I'm finished with this now. Like I don't have to, like, it's almost like a way of talking yourself out of having to feel guilty or feel anything. Why don't I feel anything now that we've dumped her in the sea? Well, it's over now, and I've done so much thinking that now it's, okay that I don't feel like having nothing left at the end. Like, is a crying moment, is a rock bottom moment, isn't it? It's not a sort of clean slate moment, unless you've got someone who can bail you out, unless you've got someone who can help you at that moment. And when they do, like I said, when I finally did, when I did come home from uni, for example, and although it wasn't the best circumstance that I moved into a shared house of students or whatever, at least I had somewhere to stay and I felt a bit better. Like, I did feel worse before I felt better, I'll admit that as well. I felt worse before I felt better, but like, they're describing this and it stands out to me as a problem with the analogy, because he's describing a rock bottom moment, and they're saying that they reached their rock bottom moment like a week after she died, or sorry, slip of the tongue there from me, a week after Madeleine went missing, and then they were able to move on and move forward in a more positive way after that, devoid of emotion. It's very, I don't like it at all.
We had spent, and we actually had a period where we discussed this openly, that we felt completely devoid of emotion. And the analogy that I like to use is a bit like when we were students and you got to your overdraft limit and you'd gone beyond it and there was just nothing left in the tank. I think physically and mentally were shattered.
Tank is he's mixing up his analogies again, isn't it? Nothing left in the tank is a petrol fuel. That could be the case with poverty. Like, I've been in that situation where and I'm not like poverty poor, living hand to mouth these days, and I'm not eliciting sympathy here. I'm just, I've been there, you've been there, we've all been there, where you're filling up your car based on like how much small change you've managed to accumulate, and you put the petrol in, and then you go in the thing, and they're like just £8.50 on pump number 2. Like, and you think, yeah, I couldn't get the full tenner together today. You know, £5.70 on pump number one. And you don't want to shout it out loud in the petrol station because you feel like an idiot for going in, but you need that petrol because you're running on empty. You know, empty tank. It could also, like, it's a petrol car analogy, isn't it, as well? And it does chime with poverty. It's an interesting mix of analogies. I don't know what to take about from that. Maybe he does mean, you know, the resource tank, you know, the fuel tank of himself and his mentality, or it could also be reference to a strength, a tank, you know, a big outward set of armor that you wear outside, and that within we are safe from the rest of the world from.
Also, I think physically and mentally we're shattered, but you know, as you gradually get more on an even keel, we started to get back into the black. And we'd also worked tirelessly behind the scenes to put support mechanisms in place, including our legal team, the response with the fund, which was really driven by offers rather than us thinking that we needed it. And once these were in place, then it helped us to focus on what we really needed to focus on.
Which would be finding Madeleine, wouldn't it? But once you've got support mechanisms in place, I mean, I can understand in a way what he's explaining would come out differently. It would be, I can't live out in Portugal and look for my daughter because I haven't got enough money to live out in Portugal and just look for my daughter. I have to fucking work a job, don't I? And I'm supposed to be back in the office, so, or the hospital or whatever. So thank fuck for this fighting fund that's come in through this legal team. To be honest, I didn't realise I was going to need a support network, but now I am financially secure enough to stay in Portugal and look out for my, you know, look for my daughter. I needed like this supplied money to do that, so thank God for that. I think that's what he's trying to say, but he's changed the way he said it is so fucked up, man. Like, now we've got all this money, we can do whatever we want, we can focus on whatever we need to focus on, which again, distancing language from what you need to focus on, which is finding Madeleine. But what actual, you know, the truth behind the scenes might be that he doesn't say that, because what he wants to focus on is moving forward. It's almost like he's saying, for the first week we were grieving really hard, and then we put a line under it and said, right, you know, she's fucking dead, we've done her funeral in the sea, now let's move on. And we're moving on. Like, isn't it weird that he's saying that? Yeah, anyone who's lost a child, for anyone who's lost a child, say they're back in the black, they might say a new normal. It's so odd. Nefarious Chuffers. Nefarious Chuffers. That sounds like my band should be called Nefarious Chuffers. Yeah, it's just so, I don't like it. I don't like anything he said there. I don't like the way he's presenting himself. I've done a lot of body language analysis of the general stuff, but because of what he said here is so like alarm bells in my mind, I find it hard to analyse his body language because I'm focused on the actual things he's fucking said.
Well, everyone who's watching, who's been following Madeleine's case over the past 3 weeks, just wishes you all the best. Thanks very much, Jerry. Thanks very much. Again,
media pumping that message down your neck. Everyone who's watching, and it is so like honestly, that's media. Like, this isn't a random interview. They've not let every other fucker have an interview. There's only a few people who they decide now that they've got control, haven't they? They've got this team, they've got this support network. This is part of that. It's to raise funds. It's an advert. So let's make sure that everyone who's watching wishes you all the best. Everyone who's watching wishes you all the best. I'm watching. I wish them all the best. Like, he's telling them what I'm feeling. He's telling me what I'm feeling. That's what's happening on the media. Good one. Well done, question asker. That was a terrible thing to say at the end of the interview.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
And they both talk over each other for the first time.
3 weeks, just wishes you all the best. Thanks very much, Jerry. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
And Jerry's got a squirrely bite of the lip as he bites back a big smile, I guess. Yeah, it's much more... Oh, it just moves off. Why won't you rewind for me now?
Jerry and Kate. Well, everyone who's... Very much, Jerry. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
I have to be very careful we don't get to the end of the video. But that's the bit I want to see, is the very end. Because he's looking up... Maybe the guy's standing... No, he's looking up at other members of the... She's looking up as well, isn't she? They're both looking up at something. And I would imagine there's more people in the room. There's like a producer or somebody else. And they've indicated that, you know, cut or something along those lines. Or maybe they're looking at a lawyer. You know, they've just mentioned them. Haven't they just been talking about this support network team? Maybe they're looking at somebody like a lawyer or something like that. Or it might be someone's just turned off the microphone or moved the boom mic. You can't really tell. But whilst doing so, they're distracted, aren't they, for a short moment? And the expressions on their faces would be their natural subconscious feelings, wouldn't it? While you're just looking at that thing. Not about the thing, but about general. And they've told us they've had, a week after they're a mess, but now they've got a support network, now they've got things in place. Where was the message at the end? Please help find Madeleine. Why was the last sentence that come out of my mouth not, where is my daughter, can you help me find her? If anyone, I know I've said this before, but if anyone is watching this and they've got anything else to add, if they're feeling guilty, if they think they might want to call in, please call in. Where was that? Where was that? Why they not look sad? I think as a surgeon you'd be able to do that without the donations. In England, it might not be the... I mean, it is a good job. I'll tell you what, it is a good job. It is good financials. But we don't know what these people have done in their lives. And he just admitted that as a student, they went all the way to the bank account to the end of the overdraft. Like, coming back from that's difficult. I don't know what's happened in their life financially. Maybe they've got problems. Some people earn a lot of money and spend a lot of money, don't they? I don't know. But certainly, even doesn't matter how well off you are, if you have to stop going to work because you've got to stay in Portugal and look after, it's one thing looking out, like trying to find your daughter from where you live, but you've already got your house and you already live there. It's another thing, quite a different thing, renting a second property abroad to not so, and you're not going to work anymore. It'd be financially, I don't think there's anyone, even if they are doing quite a good job, who could just walk into that. Like, if you could walk into a situation where you weren't required to go to work and you could have a second property abroad to live in and do what the fuck you wanted for months on end, you probably wouldn't need to go to work. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think he still needs money. And this is the face of two people, in my opinion, who have become millionaires and have done so through this sort of work. And they've just finished producing another piece of media which is going to feed into their campaign. They're happy, they're not distressed, they're not confusing, questioning, they're not, did we do all right there? Was that good for you? Was that okay? There's a sort of air of self-satisfied confidence. More on Jerry's part for the confidence, and Kate's part I find more cynical. So they do the nods, do that, and then they think it's over now. That's the moment they think it's over. Almost like slight relief from Kate that I haven't seen so much. Maybe a bit more of a clinical, like her eyes show this thoughtfulness, this cogwheels turning. I get disability if I'm out of work. It pays as well as work. Does you get that? Again, in England, I don't think you get paid to not be at work if you're looking for your daughter on holiday. Does a mental health issue, loss of a child? I don't know. Probably not. My guess is no. Maybe some jobs would understand and give you a bit of a leave. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not. I don't know your legal human rights or anything in England, but I would just guess that you would probably get a couple of weeks off work, but you wouldn't be able to be paid indefinitely to do. At this stage, you're 20 days in. You should be thinking, I'm never going to work again, am I? Because I've got to look for my daughter all my life, and it might be that I never find her. Like what's the worst case scenario? I don't know. Not good. Not good. Maybe it would. I'm only saying that as a guess, but I've worked in loads of different jobs, and it's very unlikely that it would ever happen, of course, because as we said at the start or during this, 90% of these cases, if you look back through what we saw on, look on the playlist, have a look on the playlist when we did these interviews about the police detective, some statistics came up in that about how most of these crimes are done by people that are known and it's very unlikely that a randomer would just wander in and steal a child. Very unlikely. So 2 hours 30, that concludes another one of our... We've finally got through this one video all the way to the end. That was 11 minutes of video, and it took us 2 episodes of 3 hours each. This next one is 13 minutes, so it's going to be even longer. This is Kate McCann's TV interview in full, 24th of October 2007.
Life's obviously not as happy without Madeleine.
But you've had your hair done nice, haven't you?
But, you know, I still have hope. We still have hope.
Definitely.
Biting her lips there.
You know, there's still, she's out there.
She's out there. What, in outer space?
We believe that.
I just feel anxious that she's out there and she's not with us.
Estamos aquí para hablar de Madeleine.
So we've got more interviews to do. It might not be as revealing. I think the closer you are to the incident, the more revealing it can be. Because I think the longer it goes on, there's less reason for that rawness to be there. There's more reason for it to be hammered over with other feelings and situations. But we've got more interviews to do. If anyone's got any favourite Madeleine interviews, post them in chat and I'll have a look. We might do that one instead. Because there are a few. If we look on YouTube, Madeleine McCann interview, there are a few. We've just done this one. That's the next one I want to do because it's quite close, but there's not loads. There's not loads. This is the Skavlan. Someone suggested this, didn't they? So we can have a look at that one. That's not 10 minutes there for part 1, so yeah, we can definitely have a look at that. That will be an episode that we'll do. Is it Skavlan or Skalvan? Skavlan. We believe Madeleine's still alive 10 years ago. Sky News. Sky News is obviously part of the, you know, team that is on their team, isn't it? So Sky News are not my favourite. We did just watch a Sky News one. So there are a few. We're going to look at the Skavlan one. I'm hoping.
It's raining again. I couldn't be happier. Swish and then
Put my arms up still. No one will know why I put my arms up. No one will know. I put my arms up as like a reaction to the tippies. Thank you for the tippies. There are others. There's this one as well, but I want closest to the... That one looks interesting because she looks a bit upset and it's Channel 4 News. Oh, that's the fund low on money. No wonder she looks upset. The fund is low on money. I don't know if they're going around sticking it up their nose. I don't know, do I? The strange world of celebrity. Famous for... Anyway, we're not donating to the McCann Fund with words on my... No, we're certainly not donating to their fund at all with nothing. Thank you very much for my tippies today. Thank you. We're not donating to their fund at all. Or never did I. Never would I. Because we were a household... Like, my nan... I'll tell you a little story about my nan before we go. My nan had this sixth sense. As many elder statesmanly women in our stateswomanly... you got to go to work. Have a good day. I'm going to finish the episode now anyway, so don't worry. You know, older ladies in our societies have a bit of wisdom, don't they? They have a bit of wisdom. And one of the pieces of wisdom my nan had was this psychological sixth sense with the ability to say, oh, I know who did... Like, they're doing an appeal on the telly. They're doing a tearful appeal. Have you seen someone's stabbed my husband? Oh, I'm upset. Who can we find this dangerous man? And my nan would say, they're not trying to find a dangerous man. She did it. Like what? And then 2 weeks later, it'd be on the telly, like, you know, oh, the woman who did the appeal for the thing, it turned out she did it. I'd be like, Nan said that. Nan knows, we used to say, Nan knows. Tracy Andrews, road rage killer. My nan, straight away, she did it. What do you mean she did it? I can tell. Look at her. I can tell by the way she looks. What do you mean by the way she looks? She's a former model. Anyway, Tracy Andrews, former model. So it was one of those with Madeleine. I think my nan didn't have much stock with it. I don't remember very much anyway, but I remember it going on. I remember as much as they want us to say in the interviews in the years to come that, oh, you know, people thought that they were behind the parents. People were trying to help find her in the fund. There were a lot of people that were in that fund and trying to find Madeleine, help find Madeleine. There were. a lot of people, and it's very much more, let's be clear, very much more sold to the working classes as a real life soap opera, so that they can be confused from the real things that matter. Obviously Madeleine's life matters, but the politics of the day go by the wayside for the working classes when they're more interested in the football and the tits and the dancing and the news stories on the front of the paper. You know, that's the idea of the right-wing media, that perpetuate these. They know what pushes people's buttons, they know what gets people talking, and they want them talking about shit like this for years and years, like I'm doing now, instead of keeping account on what a fucking job they're doing at the top politics. Because you know the people that run those newspapers, you know, fun Tories. Anyway, point being, there were a lot of people in the UK at the time that just thought bollocks. They just thought, no way, not at all. You've done that. You've binned her off. You're guilty. You're guilty. There was a lot of people who thought that. Let's be real. There was a lot of people who still think that, and there were a lot of people who wouldn't have given a penny to the Madeleine Fund because they didn't even want to like buy a newspaper with that crap on it again. You know, there was certainly a lot of the opposite side of the ideas there as well. So interesting stuff. Madeleine McCann. If you want to keep up to date with everything we do, keep up to date with this ever burgeoning playlist, then keep up to date with Ganjikidd, Grave Kipper, this channel. There's a variety of content. It changes from day to day. That means if you subscribe, you might sometimes see something in your subscription box that you're not that interested in. Oh, I don't want to watch Genshin Impact. Doesn't matter. You should watch it anyway because it's interesting and fun, and I go on little tangents all the time. You never know what I might talk about. Also, just hang on to the next thing that you like. It's all going to arrive in a rotating basis. So it's a good thing to subscribe to something like this. You might see something you never knew you might like. That might happen. We might play an indie game that you just had no idea was really good, or we might talk about prison food and you might think that was fun, and then we might play Prison Life Simulator and you might think, what the fuck? Prison Life Simulator? You know? We might talk about, is space fake? You don't know what's coming up. So lots of vibes, lots of fun, even though today's a bit heavy because of Madeleine McCann. You make sure that you be good, my little puckos, and if you can't be good, remember, if you can't be good, then you're naughty, but you're not as naughty as these chuffers, are you? You're not naughty like these chuffers, so I think you're good. I think you're good.